Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah.
97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Well, a good Tuesday, everybody. The Sports Bash live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. It is a Tuesday at Ocean Casino, and we are back. And guess what, everybody? Football starts this Thursday night. You can listen to the kickoff of the season Thursday night on 97.3 ESPN, and the Eagles and the Packers on Friday night right here with Merrill Reese, Mike Quick on 97.3 ESPN. I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Henning is producing today's show. And you out there, we've got a lot today. Holy mackerel, we got Eagles football back. Is that even the biggest story? I'm not sure. The Phillies took care of business this weekend. You know, the Phillies had everybody in a little bit of a panic for however long that you started your panic. But did they allow you to take a deep breath and realize 162 games is a long way to the finish line as they took care of business against the Braves this weekend? It was a fun series. It was a playoff atmosphere. Saturday night, 3-0, just an awesome game from Wheeler yesterday. Sunday night, they get the win as well on a Sunday night baseball game where they just absolutely shut down the Braves, and it felt like the Braves, who had just kind of, gave you a little panic, gave you a little worry, just kind of ran out of answers against a Phillies team that is starting to kind of find its way back again, kind of getting their mojo back. It kind of felt like after the All-Star break, hey, we got a 10-game lead in the division. Maybe we're kind of hitting that cruise control button. You make a long drive. I used to drive to Morgantown, West Virginia, and I don't want to talk about that atrocity of a game on Saturday, but you make a long drive. From here to Morgantown is 6 hours no matter how you slice it. There's parts of that drive where it's like mindless driving through like Cumberland, Maryland, and you're at points of the drive where you just have nothing in the tank. So you hit the cruise control button at about, 77 miles an hour, and you just start cruising for a little bit. As much as you want to get to the finish line, Morgantown, you want to get to the end of that 6 hours, you do hit the cruise control just because, man, my mind just needs, I don't want to have to. And you hit the cruise control. Did the Phillies hit the cruise control button after the All-Star break? They hit that Cumberland, Maryland area and said, look, I just need to hit 77 miles an hour with nothing, my feet not on the gas, and just kind of bang, drove it. And then once you cross, there's like, when you make a drive and you do it often enough, you have like landmarks on your drive where there are certain things. Like when you drive home from Philly and you hit the Farley Plaza, that's where you're like, okay, your mind changes of like, I'm back into an area that I feel comfortable in. I'm ready to put my foot back on the gas and get myself home. You hit that little patch between like Hamilton and the Farley Plaza. That's where you're like, all right, I'm going to hit cruise control for about 10 minutes here and just kind of like, get myself ready for that last stretch run of this drive. That's where I think the Phillies might have been. The Phillies felt like they hit the cruise control and they just kind of kept it on for a little while longer than we would have all liked it. Because this weekend kind of showed and displayed that the Phillies basically said, all right, Atlanta, you're going to come in here and we're going to extend our lead on you. They took 3 out of 4 in the series. They won the last 2, and they did it in a way where you take a look at this weekend, they were all close games. I mean, you had 3-2. With the Castellanos day. We'll get into Castellanos. I know everybody tweeting at me, texting me about Castellanos, who, by the way, tip of cap. Castellanos, man, I love what we're seeing from him. And I hope Castellanos continues to stay as consistent as he's been since the All-Star break. His first 2 months of the season were pretty hideous. I mean, pretty hideous. And ever since the first 2 months of the season, he's been probably the Phillies' most consistent guy. 3-2 on Sunday night, 3-0 on Saturday. Just a great game. Well-pitched game from Zach Wheeler. You had the loss in the game on Friday and the 5-4 win on Thursday. So all the games had a story in them. I thought last night's game with the Castellanos, by the way, he had the 2 RBI early in the game, and then he wins the game in the ninth, or not the ninth, it was the 11th, obviously, on Sunday Night Baseball, as the extra innings kept that game kind of going. Castellanos, 2 for 5. He had the 3 RBI in the game. He's the one guy who showed up, along with Harper, who had a couple of doubles. But, hey, listen, it's a feel-good weekend for the Phillies, and I thought there were so many different stories this weekend. You had Estevez kind of show up that, hey, I belong in these big moments. He's been a guy that has me a little concerned about whether or not he will be able to, you know, the getting the last 3 outs in a game in Anaheim is different than getting the last 3 outs in a game in Philadelphia. So you had all of that this weekend wrapped into it, right? You had all of the different things that you had questions about. And I don't want to say all get definitively answered, but you had all the questions come up this weekend, and all of them kind of had an answer to them. Nola pitching well again. Here's the problem with Nola. He can pitch well from now to the end of the season, and this is what I talk about, right? My buddy yesterday texting me over and over things about Nick Castellanos. I'm not going to sit here and debate that Castellanos is on a good streak. He's on a very good streak. But I'm not worried about, you know, how good you look in August against the Kansas City Royals. I want to know, can I trust you in the biggest moments? You know, Aaron Nola is one of those guys where he takes you on as what I call the Nola coaster. You know what Nola is. He's up, he's down. He's up, 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 then he's down. Then he's up, then he's down, down, down. Then he's up, then he's down. Then he's up, up, and then that's who Nola's been. We have enough resume. You know, you can tell me Castellanos been consistent for 3 months, 4 months. That's great. I have a 10-year career that I'm going off on. I'm not just basing it on 3 months. Yeah, if you want to ask me, have the last 3 months been good Castellanos? My answer would be, of course. He's been on a good streak. But we have 10 years of data on Nick Castellanos. We have 10 years of data on these players as to who they are and what they are. I don't care that Nick Castellanos has been very good for the last 3 months. Can I trust him in a series against the Arizona Diamondbacks in the National League Championship Series? And the last evidence of that is, no, I could not. You know, Castellanos' playoffs have been exactly who he is. So he could give me 6 straight months of consistent hitting, and I'm still going to have questions. Why? Because the playoffs are different than the regular season. These are Nick Castellanos' playoff numbers with the Phillies. In 2022 in the wild card, he hit 125. He hit 0. He had no hits. In 2022 in the National League Division Series, he hit 313. In the National League Championship Series in 2022, he hit 222. In the World Series, he hit 125. In the wild card last year, he hit 250. In the division series against the Braves, he hit 467, had 4 home runs. And in the series against the Arizona Diamondbacks, he hit 0.42. If that's not streaky, I don't know what to tell you the word streaky means. 0, 313, 222, 125, 250, 467, and 0.42. So the weekend was filled with positive stuff from Castellanos, and I hope it leads to Castellanos being able to be a guy you can depend on. But if I ask all our listeners right now, based on what you've seen from Nick Castellanos, because I know it's going to come up in the Nuggets today, I know Earnshaw is chomping at the bit to ask me about Castellanos and whether I'm buying in. And I will remain with this answer. I will remain with this answer on Castellanos until I see it in the playoffs. That's what it comes down to. I'm not worried about regular season accolades. I'm not worried about regular season success. I'm not worried about regular season statistics with guys on this team. This is turning into the Sixers. I'll believe it when I see it in the playoffs. And the evidence I have in playoff baseball is when the pitching level goes up, and this is normal for everybody, when the pitching level goes up, can the consistency remain? And I have my doubts. I mean, Castellanos the other night, he gets the game-winning hit. He gets the double that gives him the first 2 runs. He had a great weekend. I hope I see more of it. I am cautiously optimistic that maybe as his 10 years in this league or however many league seasons Castellanos has played, that could change. We shall see. What do you guys think? Let me know. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. If you want to get involved on the text board, please do. If you want to get involved at Mike Gill Show on Twitter, let me know what you're thinking regarding the Phillies weekend. There was other things this weekend, too, but I think the Castellanos thing is big for a couple of reasons. One, they need him. They need Nick Castellanos. He's been a big part of this team. And I've been on record saying I love the signing, and I've been disappointed by the signing. I thought you were getting an MVP-level player. Not an MVP, but I'm talking about a guy who's in, the race. He's in the top 10 of betting odds. Instead, we've got a guy who has been very hot and very cold. And when he's hot, he carries the team. And when he's not, he sinks the team.
But, Mike, back to your previous thing about the Sixers analogy, I think that's something we can't ignore because even if Castellanos had an MVP season, right, even if he finished, runner-up to Ohtani this year, wouldn't you still be asking the question, is he going to deliver in the postseason? Isn't the whole Sixers thing, it doesn't matter if Embiid wins regular season MVP. It matters what you do in the postseason. So almost it doesn't, are we getting to the point where are we saying, who cares what we do in the regular season with the Phillies? Just get us to the World Series.
I think if Nick Castellanos hit 210 this season with 15 home runs and his hot streak came in October, no one cares that he hits 210, do they?
That's the problem. So, Mike, your thing about Castellanos is even if he did have an MVP season, we could be sitting here on September 3rd, if in an alternate reality, right, saying, man, Nick Castellanos has got 30 home runs and 100 RBI and batting 300. And there's still people who say, but Mike, what about the playoffs?
That's what it comes down to. I got a buddy of mine who's all on the Castellanos train, which is admirable, and he's sending me the stats of Castellanos and Harper, and he says, well, one we're saying we're streaky, and the other guy we're just saying is off. And I said, I'm not saying Harper's off. Harper, there was a story over the weekend from Todd Zalecki that said he's been dealing with elbow problems, wrist problems, and that he's been struggling. I think Harper's been bad, but Harper's body of work over time is more consistent than Castellanos is, right? I mean, Harper is a guy who's been constantly in the MVP conversation.
Right. So
Castellanos is a guy who had 1 year where he was really, really in that MVP conversation. And other than that, he's been just an average to good hitter. This year, I mean, he's been good. I mean, he was bad early. Like, I don't know. If I say to you, I think Castellanos is streaky. He had 2 really bad months, and now he's had 3 pretty consistent months back to back to back. But what am I supposed to say about the 2 months he had early in the season? Am I supposed to negate them and say that he's had a good year when those 2 months are part of it?
The 2 months have to be part of the conversation because it's part of the story of his career, right? Is it the story of his career? He has been an every other kind of guy, every other year, every other month, every other week.
Listen, I think Castellanos has had an amazing turnaround this year. I brought it up. If he can get himself to 250, which I thought was far-fetched to happen, that would have meant he really got himself into gear and had a really good second half of the year. And by the way, he's right at 250 right now, which I can't even believe that he's got himself to 250. I can't believe that he has been that good that he's got to 250. But there's a part of me, and maybe not you guys out there. Maybe I'm the only skeptic here. There's a part of me that's waiting for the other shoe to drop of when he goes on that streak the opposite direction,
right,
where he can't figure out how to get out of a wet paper bag.
Well, I mean, look at Castellanos since the All-Star break, as you mentioned, Mike. 288 batting average, 29 RBI in 41 games. The guy is playing really well for a stretch of games. But as you said, the first 2 months of the year, we were having conversations. Why isn't this guy getting a day off? Remember those conversations?
Yeah, I believe that. And listen, I said the only thing I can think of as to why he wasn't getting the day off is something that has since been revealed. He had a conversation with Rob Thompson early in the year and said that he wanted to play 160, and that is what's happening right now. He's on pace, and he hasn't missed a game yet. So he had that conversation. He wanted to play 160, and that is part of the reason why I think he didn't get that day off, because he has kind of earned that right as the veteran on the team and a guy who has a lot of respect on this team as, hey, if you want to play 160 and you're willing to do that, we'll accommodate. But there were times early in this year where you were wondering, how are you not giving this guy just a day to kind of sit and think about things and get baseball off his mind? Because he was so bad.
Right.
And they stuck with him. They stuck it out. And listen, it's kind of worked out on the other side. But I think a lot of people are on my side on this and would say, hey, listen, I think Castellanos is on a great streak right now. He's been very consistent and very good for, I don't know, you go back to the All-Star break. When was that? Right around July 4th?
The All-Star break was, they came back July 18th.
All right, so right around the middle of July, so you're talking about middle of July to August to now. So you've got about 2 solid months of pretty good Nick Castellanos. But we've had times in the past where Castellanos has given us 2 months of solid, and he's given us 2 months of not so solid. So this isn't like a revelation. This isn't like,
no,
oh, my God, how could you not be buying in Nick Castellanos? I might say to you, what in his past has shown you that you can trust him? What has he done in his past that would suggest you're ready to we're always so unwilling to let our guard down with Philadelphia sports, right? Well, last year they disappointed us. Oh, they always lose. Oh, they never make it. But for this guy who has done nothing but disappoint us in big moments, how are we willing to let our guard down? And quite frankly, I don't think there are very many people that are willing to let their guard down on this. I think it just happens to be some people in my circle that I know that just like to disagree with me and argue with me, because I don't really think they believe in Castellanos. Maybe Earnshaw. I think Earnshaw is just a positive guy.
He is.
And he wants to believe in Castellanos. But I think literally more people would say, I just want to disagree with you on this one, because I don't think anybody realistically has any evidence of any stretch in a playoff series. Look, 472, 4 home runs against the Braves, 072, 11 strikeouts against the Diamondbacks. The proof is in the pudding, and that's not the only series this has happened. I gave you his playoff numbers, his postseason numbers in his career, by the way. In Detroit in 2014, he hit 100. In the National League Division Series against Baltimore. In 2020 for Cincinnati, he was playing for Cincinnati against the Braves. He hit 300. In his first wild card series against the Cardinals, he did not have a hit in the 2 games. He hit 0-0-0. In 2022's division series against the Braves, he hit 313, had 5 RBI. In the next series, he hit 222 against the Padres. In the next series against Houston, the World Series, he hit 125 with 10 strikeouts in that series. You talk about streaky. This guy's the definite. They have a big poster on the wall of, hi, you're looking for someone who's streaky? I present to you this man.
Mike, on the text board at 609-403-0973, Shaner in EHC says, Mike, I 100% agree on Castellanos. Show me in the playoffs. Could we be seeing a Sixers-type Phillies era? They do have the pieces to get over the top, but they have to show up when it matters. Also, they got to get it done sooner than later. They are aging. That's from Shaner in EHC.
Shaner, good one, because you're right. And I've made this. The Phillies are starting. They're getting close to the Sixers era, where the regular season accolades and success are going to start wearing on people if they don't get a championship. Because the Phillies have already got to a World Series. They didn't win it, but they got there. Their problem is, okay, we got out of the wild card. We've got out of the division. We've got out of the championship. The only thing that will make people believe in them is a World Series. They really can't do much more than win the World Series to sell people. The Sixers, their bugaboo is they can't get out of the second round. So it doesn't matter how far they go or what they do in the regular season. People are not going to let their guard down with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey and this group until they get out of that second round. The Phillies have gotten to a point now where people, and it might not be now, but I don't know how much longer Phillies fans are going to keep their guard down or allow their guard to go down unless this team wins a World Series with this core group of guys. With this core group of guys is the key. Because with the Harper, Schwarber, Turner, Castellanos, you still have, 2 more years of this crew signed together, right?
Yes, this group, the whole group as a whole.
And Real Muto, throw him in there
right,
as well.
Because Real Muto and Schwarber, both their contracts expire after next year.
Right. You have, and then Bohm and Stott, they're a part of this as well. They've been to all the runs. So literally this whole team, Harper, Stott, Turner, Bohm, Schwarber, Castellanos, Real Muto. You could throw Wheeler and Nola in there and Suarez as well. Like that group of guys has been the core group of this guy through the 3 runs together. The only guy that wasn't here in the World Series was Trey Turner. Everybody else was here. And at what point do you say, okay, Nick Castellanos, you are on a heater right now, but what are you going to do for me in October? That kind of stuff. It's unfortunate, but I look at what he did in his 2 playoff runs in Philadelphia, and those 2 things stand out more to me than what he's doing now, and even what he's done the first 2 months of the season. Those first 2 months of the season where he hit 193 and 229, I'm not even knocking him for those 2 months where he was horrendous. I'm not knocking him for those 2 months at all. I'm just telling you that whatever he does from now to the end, and by the way, you want to talk about consistency? June, 276. July, 275. August, 275. That's about as consistent as you can get. But it's, again, you want to put a poster on the wall and find a guy that says streaky? There's a guy right there. 3 horrible months followed by 3 really good months. To me, if I bring up the Webster's Dictionary of streaky, you have a picture of this man right up on your wall. 609, and the text messages are coming in, and mostly I see people agreeing with me on this, so I do have faith in society out there that we do have people that know what they're talking about. But if he can stay on this consistent pace when it matters the most, and again, that's what it comes down to. Joel Embiid's as consistent as it is in the regular season. But when it gets to the playoffs, we have questions. Same for me with this situation right here. I don't care how consistent you are in July and August and September. Those stats mean nothing for this team right now. The stats that mean everything are going to come in October. And if you go 476 with 4 homers and followed up with 472 with 11 strikeouts, not getting it done. So, did this weekend change those thoughts for you? 609-403-0973. More text messages. Frank Close, his Phillies mailbag is on the other side. Bob Wankel tonight at 5 o'clock will join me here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. We are live at Ocean Casino's Gallery Bar Booking Games on it's a Tuesday today, no Monday, the holiday. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it and is ready to go for the start of the NFL season. That's all today on the Sports Bash.
It's Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
We're live today at the Oceans Gallery Bar Booking Games. And, of course, this Thursday night, the kickoff will be here live. You can watch all the action and, of course, listen to it on 97.3 ESPN. If you're looking for a place to watch the game on Friday night, the Gallery Bar Booking Games kicks off the season with the Eagles in Brazil against the Packers. We'll have more on that game coming up at 3 o'clock with John McMullen. Right now, let's get into Frank's Phillies mailbag as Frank Close joins us now with a look at the Phillies as they had the day off yesterday. They have a 7-game lead now after the weekend against the Braves. And let's start there, Frank. You know, they kind of took care of business there. And would you say on September the 3rd that the National League East is done?
I think so. I think the Phillies really needed to take care of business during that series with Atlanta, and they did it. So that was definitely the big test. You know, I think for a while it seemed like the Phillies would take 2 steps forward and 2 steps back immediately, but that was the statement the Phillies absolutely had to make. I mean, even if they went for a split compared to winning 3 out of 4, that's quite the difference in the standings. You're talking 5 games instead of 7. I think that's enough to get it done. And by the way, the Mets now half game behind the Braves for the 3rd wild card spot. The Braves are no longer the number 1 wild card spot. So I think this is going to be an interesting thing to watch going down the stretch. Phillies do play the Mets 7 times, so that will probably help determine whether or not the Mets get in. So it'd be nice to see the Phillies take advantage against the Mets and really kind of knock them out. But I think the Phillies are in a really good position now going into the last month. And if you look at their schedule, it's somewhat favorable the rest of the way. No real big tests like you were seeing along the way, especially those 4 games in Atlanta.
Tonight you're going to get Tyler Phillips getting the start. So this kind of ties into one of the questions in the mailbag here. So let's start with that and kind of wrap it in. Phillips is pitching tonight because Taijuan Walker got shipped to the bullpen. Jason on the mailbag this week wants to know why haven't the Phillies just release Walker? There's a lot of reasons here. Now, they have him in this new role, which I can't imagine you're going to see him a lot in, and I would imagine he doesn't make the playoff roster. But why not just release him at this point?
Well, yes, the Phillies indeed have $18 million a year invested in him for 2 more seasons. And I'm not sure that the Phillies are necessarily even opposed to eating that money. But what I think they're in a situation right now is if they release him, what's going to happen? Well, he probably sits out the rest of the year. And then in the offseason, he signs with somebody else on the Phillies' dime, and he gets invited to spring training. And I think it would behoove the Phillies to hang on to him and see if in their spring training he gets his velocity back and can contribute something to the major leagues. What you don't want to see is the Phillies release him, he signs with someone else, and then he figures it out there. So you might as well see first in spring training if he is able to help the Phillies and is able to do anything that gets the Phillies something next season. And you won't really know that, I think, until next spring training. And, you know, you're absolutely right. He's probably not on the playoff roster. And to be very honest, I think the only one behind him on the bullpen depth chart right now is Garrett Stubbs. You know, so I think you're going to see Taijuan Walker if the score gets lopsided one way or the other. But beyond that, I think the Phillies will not be putting him in any close games. They have an extra roster spot for a pitcher since the month of September now. So I think they can afford to carry him through the month. And then next spring training, see what he has. And if he doesn't have anything there, I think then that's the time that you cut bait with him.
All right, let's get into number 2. Glenn wants to know why no Marchand on the roster. They expanded. They brought up Cody Clemens as the offensive player. Many people thought it would be Marchand. Why no Marchand?
Well, the Phillies actually finally the other day put him onto the injured list. He was dealing with a little bit of a shoulder issue. He actually sat out a handful of games for the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs. Came back to play, had 1 full game, and then the next day, which was on the 23rd, I believe, or 24th, he didn't even get to bat. He had left the game early after receiving the first inning. So he is out with the shoulder impingement. That's the official word. While I think it'd be very, very helpful and beneficial to the Phillies to see what he can do in the major leagues, especially when you want to give JT Realmuto some extra rest down the stretch so that he is ready for the playoffs. You know, as we've said a bunch of times, a lot of seasons down the stretch, he was a little bit banged up, and he was out on the injured list this year. So I think it would have been nice to have Marchand, but unfortunately Marchand is not healthy. I'm not sure there's another catcher that's necessarily worthy of coming up right now. And meanwhile, Cody Clemens as an extra infielder, in fact, you saw him make that nice play with Estevez on the mound against the Braves at third base. You know, you have an extra infielder while Alec Boehm is a little bit banged up. So So I think the Phillies would have liked to have Marchand, but unfortunately he's injured, and that might even raise a question. He's been injured a lot lately, so maybe that affects how the Phillies move forward.
All right, another question kind of ties into the conversation we had at the start of the show, Frank. Do you believe Dave Dombrowski will go into 2025 with the same outfield? They've had very poor outfield production this season between Hayes and Marsh and Rojas, and obviously you had Castellanos slumping early, then he's been better as of late. But as a group, it's not been a very good outfield. So is that something they're going to have to address?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think Castellanos is. I didn't really even mention him much because I think he is set in right field, and I think he's going to be set in right field. The Phillies still have him under contract for 2 more seasons, so I don't think he's going anywhere. But really, the question of whether Marsh and Austin Hayes should be starting in the same outfield is an important question.
Well, let's start there. Let's start there real quick. In the Hayes, Marsh, Rojas triangle, right? Are you at the point where you would rather see a Hayes-Marsh platoon or the Marsh-Rojas platoon that they see me in? Which configuration do you think should be the more do you like Rojas's defense and speed over what Hayes brings you? And then, like, the way I look at it is, at least Hayes against a lefty, you could bring him into pinch hit at some point during the game. You're not going to use Marsh as a pinch hitter. So, Rojas as a pinch hitter. I would rather Rojas' speed and defense for 9 innings than what Hayes gives me offensively, which is essentially nothing against right-handed pitching.
Yeah, this is where it gets a little difficult because I think all the numbers suggest that Hayes and Marsh would be best served in a platoon. And, Hayes is batting .350 against left-handed pitching. And, of course, Marsh, while it's not as glamorous a number, is hitting .254 against righties compared to .200 against lefties. So it does make sense that the two of them are in a platoon. Now, part of the problem is that defense that in center field. The Phillies don't seem to plan to have Austin Hayes play any center field. He has in the past for the Orioles. And so this is where I think it becomes a problem because
right. You're right. Neither one of them is a very good defensive player. Marsh in center, not good. And Hayes is just an average as well.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with Marsh in center. I think he's better suited in left. But, the real problem is if you give it to Rojas in center field, even Rojas, he's got reverse splits. He's sitting better against righties than lefties, which is a little interesting situation. Batting .198 against against lefties, which is surprising because usually the right-hand batters do better against lefties. I think if you're going to talk about what to do for next year, I think the ideal thing is you keep Marsh and Hayes in a platoon, and then you probably got to find another center field. It feels like this was the thing the Phillies have been working on for years and years and years, and at times they seem to figure out first with Marsh and then with Rojas. But I think the longer term answer to that question is when Justin Crawford comes up to the major leagues because he can play center. He's a left-handed hitter who hits pretty well against both sides. Until you get to that point, you're kind of in this limbo. So, can the Phillies find some center fielder who can play good defense and hit a little better on a 1-year deal next year? I don't know. The center fielders seem to be elusive, but the numbers really do suggest that neither Marsh nor Hayes should be starting every day. And I think if you're talking about that triangle as you did, Mike, I still think they're probably playing it the best way right now. I would mix in Weston Wilson more against some lefties, but they haven't bitten yet. They haven't tried to put Hayes. Why I keep calling him Mays? Hayes in center field and playing Wilson in left. They've kind of shied away from that so far. So. Yeah, I think they're just kind of mix and matching. There's not an ideal triangle, so to speak, to use your word, I think, with this group that they have.
Yeah, no, listen, and nobody is sitting here suggesting that Rojas gives you much in the way of offense. That's his least admirable quality. But what he does to, the other night, the plays he makes saves you runs. And if you get that defense through the 9 innings, you can't just say, hey, pick your spots with him and throw him in the outfield. You may have given up a run somewhere along the line during that game that could have been prevented. If Hayes was just a better a more consistent offensive player against right-handed pitching. That's the problem. He doesn't hit righties, and Marsh doesn't hit lefties, and you can let those two guys battle it out there. So we'll see, because that's going to be the next half. If Hayes continues to struggle against righties for the month of September here.
Yeah, and I think, too, speaking broadly about the whole lineup, they could probably use another left-handed hitter that can bat somewhere in the middle. I mean, when you have Marsh and Stott, neither of whom are hitting that well this year, having to bat fifth or sixth, I think it would be helpful to have an outfielder who bats left-handed and plays every day. But again, if Hayes played center, that would be easier. But even then, it's not ideal to have a Marsh-Hayes platoon in center.
Frank Close, 97.3 ESPN.com. The Phillies getting ready after the day off yesterday, continuing, 7 games up in the division here. Castellanos, big conversation about him. This guy has been consistent as can be. 275 in June, 275 in July, and 275 or so, I think it's 276 in August. Are you ready, Frank Close, to buy in on this version of Nick Castellanos?
I think so. I mean, the big argument with Castellanos the last couple seasons is he had his really high highs and his really low lows. What they really needed was the guy that hits 275 all the time. So it's really nice to see that. And when you have someone who's that consistent, he can do what he did on Sunday, which is driving all the runs in a game and make the difference against a tough team. So I think this is exactly what they would wish for the most.
It's what they would wish for. You're right about that. It's what they would wish for. Everybody wishes for a consistency that he's giving you right now. You said it, though. The high highs and the low lows. He has been so streaky. You wonder if he has figured it out to be more consistent. That's the problem here, is most of us will only believe it when we see it in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And let's face it, too. You're facing the best of the best pitching once you get to the playoffs. So you need that consistency. You can't have someone that mashes against the lesser pitching and then can't show up against the good arms. So he is carrying them at a time where they really, really need him, especially with Harper seemingly hurt. As Todd Zalecki indicated, he's got a little soreness in his elbow. That was the same one he had the Tommy John surgery on. So you worry about that a little bit, especially since his power has not been around lately, and as Kyle Schwarber's power seems to have disappeared lately as well. So having that steady force is really important. You got to think Schwarber will get it back, and you got to hope that Harper will get healthier. I mean, he's still playing through it, so you got to hope he gets his stroke back. But having that consistent, especially now with Alec Bohm missing a few games, really, really, really important, because Bohm was their consistency.
Yeah, when Bohm hopefully is back tonight when they play the Blue Jays, and we'll try to get that lineup when it is out for you here on the Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN to see if Alec Bohm does return. He did not play this weekend, and they were able to kind of pick up some wins there. That's one area. If Bohm's out, you do have Sosa, who's been pretty good filling in. Sosa is the guy that fills in those infield spots that's been giving you at least something there. So we'll keep our eye on the lineup and all that jazz as the Phillies get ready to take on Toronto, and Bohm hopefully will be back for that. We'll have more on the Phils as they get ready to try to close out this month of September, not only the National League East, but trying to get that number one seed and get those home field advantage games, how important that is. They talked about it this weekend, and we'll keep an eye on that as well. All right, Frank, we'll talk to you with another edition of the Mailbag next week.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. There's Frank and the Mailbag up every week over at 97.3 ESPN.com. As we talked a lot of topics there, we'll continue. The Eagles on the way as well. John McMullen from Birds 365 will be popping in at 3 o'clock today as the Eagles get ready to take on the Packers. You can hear the Eagles and the Packers on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, all the Eagles news and notes. Nick Sirianni spoke today. The coordinator spoke yesterday. We'll get you up to date on everything they had to say. Coming up next on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
All right, 2:51. We got our first edition of Who's Hot, Who's Not, Who's In, Who's Out. That's today at 3:30. My 14 playoff teams. First edition coming up today at 3:30. Who's in, who's out, who's hot, who's not. We'll do it every Tuesday at 3:30 for the football season. After all the games are in the books, we'll tell you which teams I think will make the NFL playoff. There's a little sneak peek if you're watching on the video stream at Mike Gill Show on the X platform. Use the hashtag SBLive. You know, some reports coming in that Jack Driscoll was hanging out at Eagles practice today. Could he be joining the Eagles roster, give the Eagles a little bit more offensive line depth in that spot there? You know, the Eagles getting ready for the Packers. One person, one ESPN NFL observer, thinks that this Week 1 game is the most important game of the weekend. Now, there's a lot of interesting games this weekend. You got the Chiefs and the Ravens Thursday night right here on 97.3 ESPN. But I said this a couple years ago, and I think that it might be – now, I got to go through the whole first week's schedule. I haven't looked at the schedule. We'll do our first look at the schedule on Thursday's show. But the Eagles-Packers, the Packers went 9-8 last year, right? They weren't like a 13-4 type of team. This team went 9-8. They won a playoff game, which surprised people. And because they played so well in that playoff game that they ended up losing, people just assume that they're going to be a Super Bowl contending team. For the Eagles, on the flip side, because of how they ended the season, if they come out and look like a team that has not changed from the team we saw leave the field in Tampa Bay, and they come out and they can't pick up the blitz, and their defense is all over the place in terms of giving up plays, and I say all over the place in a bad way. I'm talking about out of place, out of position, can't rush the passer. This game could be the first of what we look at is a team that couldn't figure out their issues from last year, that maybe they thought they had their issues last year. And I think they did identify that their coordinators weren't strong enough. So I backed them on that. I think they did make and identify the right decisions of, hey, we had an inexperienced play caller, we had an inexperienced defensive coordinator, and we identified those things. But is this the most important Week 1 game? We'll talk to John McMullen about that coming up next on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. His last observations from today's practice, because they're getting on the plane and they are heading to Sao Paulo, Brazil, in a game that, by the way, how about Slay? Says, I'm telling my family not to come, not leaving my hotel room, don't even want to be there. You know, this has been a wild weekend with all the stuff regarding what is going on in Brazil. These Eagle players, all business, needing to get in and get out. Is this the most important Week 1 game? Plus, Nick Sirianni peered over his sunglasses today. For what reason? Something at practice today made him look down to his other coach and say, wow. We'll tell you about that coming up next on the Sports Pass Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Jersey. This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
This is the most important game of Week 1, and I say that because of what I heard out of there. This team has to get their chemistry back. They have been working all offseason on that. Nick Sirianni knows he has to get more out of Jalen Hurts in terms of locker room leadership, and Sirianni himself knows he needs to get more leadership out of himself within this locker room. This team went through an epic collapse last year. This is the game where you are setting momentum in place. You are changing the dynamic and the narrative about the rest of the season.
ESPN's Jeff Darlington says this is the biggest Week 1 game on the schedule. It sets the tone for both of these teams. Green Bay, many people think, is a Super Bowl contender. Philadelphia, can they bounce back from what was an epic collapse last year? It is Eagles-Packers week. They're heading to Brazil after practice today, as John McMullen tweeted about 2 hours ago. A beautiful Friday in South Philadelphia. But, of course, it's not Friday. It's Tuesday. It's just their Friday as they get ready for Friday night in Brazil against the Packers, and he joins us now on the Sports Bash. John McMullen, Birds 365 on the Jacob Media YouTube channel, weekday mornings at 8 a.m. Johnny Mac, yes, it feels like a Friday for the Birds as they play Friday night. Today, their final practice. The injury report should be out, and we should be ready to go. How are you, my friend?
Doing well, yeah. I wish I could say I did that on purpose, but it really felt like a Friday to me. I tell you this all the time during training camp, and now we're just out of training camp. I never know what day it is. I got to sit and think about it. So it felt like a Friday, and then I said, oh, they're playing on Friday. I quickly caught it. But anyway, yeah, it completely felt like a Friday. I don't know. I heard the clip. I don't know who said that, but I think that's a little bit of hyperbole. I don't think it's going to destroy anybody's season by losing this game. I think they're both pretty good teams. And it's a good matchup for week one. I will say that.
Yeah, it's a great matchup, but I think his premise is really, the fact that if the Eagles go down there and get beat up and look bad again, is that going to seep into the subconscious of we didn't fix anything?
Well, I mean, yeah, if they get blown out, I think it could, be a wake-up call. I don't think that's going to happen, number one. But I do the leadership part of it. Like, I mean, they had some of the best leaders in the history of this organization, namely leaving Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox. So, are you going to have better leadership than those two guys? Leadership wasn't the reason the Eagles collapsed last year. They collapsed because they couldn't handle the blitz. It had nothing to do with leadership. So, but if that's, what people are going to hang their hat on, it's going to be tough to replicate Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox.
Well, you're right about that. A lot of people have indicated that, hey, how is it a leadership thing when you had Kelce and you had Fletcher here? The Eagles seemingly, John, identified the problem as coaching, right? I mean, isn't that what they told us? They fired the offensive coordinator. They replaced the defensive coordinator in season and then got rid of his replacement. The Eagles pretty much said, we identified what we thought the issue was, and is that enough to say, hey, those problems are behind them?
Yeah, well, I think it's to be determined. But, yeah, from the standpoint of the coaching, they clearly thought that the coordinators were in over their head, and that's sort of where they had the default line of placing blame. And you make that, I always call it the pendulum effect in the NFL. You go from inexperienced coordinators to getting this, in Vic's case, he's got 40 years of coaching experience in the pro ranks. And Kellen Moore, even though he's a young guy, has been an offensive coordinator for a long time now. So is that the only reason? No, I don't think it's the only reason they collapsed last year was because of Brian Johnson and Sean Desai. I do think the decision to go away from Sean Desai in season to Matt Patricia was a disaster. But, sometimes it takes time to grow. And if they would have had that patience, who knows? But I do think they've gotten better at the coordinator positions.
John McMullen, Birds 365. You take a look at what this game means. I think we might have talked about this last week, but, you had that game against the Falcons a couple of years ago where we thought, like, hey, this is a home field advantage type of game. The winner is, there could be a possibility that late in the season you go back to this game and it being in Brazil. We've heard a lot of comments from the Eagles players about this game being in Brazil, but what is the vibe around the team in general about having to play a home game of theirs in Brazil?
I don't think the players think of it that way. I think that's more of an organizational decision. I'm a little bit surprised, to be honest, that Jeffrey Lurie agreed to it and didn't push back a little bit from the standpoint I think he understands what it means to the NFL, and I think it's not a problem that they're going. But I would have pushed, if I were the Eagles, I would have pushed for Cleveland. Still a good team, still a playoff level team, but this is, if you lose to an AFC team, you never want to lose, but it's not nearly as big as a deal.
Right.
Here, you're giving up a home game against potentially one of the few teams that could beat you in the NFC, not only in the playoffs, but for home field advantage. So, yeah, I think that was an organizational. They should have pushed back on that with the league, to be honest. And maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But I think from the players' perspective, half of them don't even know, to be honest. You had the extra home game. It's just on the schedule. It's just the next game. And they got to go. And from that standpoint, Nick has been pretty clear, and he compared it to a rain game. Like, whoever, if you're worried about the rain, you're probably going to let it affect you. If you say, all right, we got to deal with it, you're going to be in good shape. And that's what he's trying to preach to the team. Green Bay's got to go to Sao Paulo as well. Mm-hmm. So there's no disadvantage from that standpoint. But, yeah, I would have rather played the Green Bay Packers in Lincoln Financial Field. I don't even think that should be a debate.
John, the injury report not out as I see it yet anyway. Do we anticipate, though, anybody missing the game due to injury on Friday night?
The only guy would be Jack Stoll, and he's not even technically on the team, but I thought he was one of the guys who had a chance to be elevated because they only have 2 tight ends on the 53-man roster. And you got those 2 practice squad elevations. So Jack hasn't practiced this week. When he first came back, he was on the practice field, and then he must have done something. So, and the fact that he's on the practice squad, he's not even going to be listed on the injury report. But as far as the guys, Dallas Goedert, Isaiah Rodgers, they've all been practicing, and they should be good to go for the game.
All right, John, you got a bunch here. Today the bite that seems to be making its way around is Sirianni, peering over his sunglasses on a Saquon Barkley run as if like, whoa, we've got this guy on our team. And I know everybody has had their thoughts on Barkley and the addition. My take has kind of been, for the money they paid him, they did something that is not normal. They spent money on a position that you don't spend money on. Does that equate to you that Saquon Barkley will have a big usage in Kellen Moore's offense? What kind of vibe do you feel from Kellen Moore, Nick Sirianni about the season that we're about to see from their high-priced free agent acquisition?
Yeah, I think it's more of they want a better formatted offense to close out games. I think that's what Saquon Barkley is about with this Eagles team. Obviously, the passing game is going to revolve around A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. Nick's very honest about that, so is Kellen Moore. And he's going to hopefully complement that maybe a little bit better than they've been able to do in the past, although part of that is they just didn't use DeAndre Swift and Kenny Gainwell in that aspect of the game, and we'll see if that amps up a little bit. But remember, now they have Jahan Dotson. They got to get involved. So, and plus, I think they have to be very cognizant of Saquon and where he is in his career and how many touches he has, dating really back to Penn State. A lot of tread off the tire. So I think they'll be conscious. I don't think a couple of years ago they're playing Green Bay. Green Bay now has Josh Jacobs. A couple of years ago, 2022, he touched the football almost 400 times. He had 1,600 yards. He was phenomenal. And then last year he comes back and he's got 800 yards and he's under 4 yards a carry. And the history is clear. When you run people into the ground like that, it's not going to be good. So I think the Eagles are going to be very cognizant of the touch count for Saquon Barkley, and he's going to be on a pitch count.
Pitch count possibly for Saquon. We'll see. What about Dotson? He's the new toy. What kind of role do you anticipate? I know he was a subject of a lot of questions with Kellen Moore over the weekend and how they figure him. I know you would imagine, okay, if you're just sitting here looking at the depth chart, Brown will probably get the most targets. Smith gets the next most. I don't know who gets the third most or the fourth most. Where's Dotson on that hierarchy?
Yeah, I mean, if everybody's healthy, he's going to be fourth on that hierarchy behind Dallas Goedert. And it's going to be, more of a situation where when the football comes his way, makes a play. That's what the Eagles typically haven't been able to do with Quez Watkins in recent years, or last year, if you want to throw Olamide Zaccheaus. Julio made a couple plays, but obviously he was near the end of his career. I think it's about if the play comes your way, just make it. And that's what they want from Jahan Dotson. And he's certainly talented enough to do it. But, yeah, it's not going to be a high-traffic position by any stretch of the imagination. There's only one football. And, Doug Peterson used to talk about this all the time to us. It's like, I think people don't understand. You don't draw up plays for your fourth and fifth option. They're secondary, reads, sometimes progression, third progression reads. You're drawing up plays for your playmakers.
Big time, right? And remember this conversation last year, John, is the first game of the year. Brown had all the targets and the catches. Smith had nothing. People were perplexed. And at the end of the day, Smith had a big year. Brown had a big year. You can't go to the same guy every single week. It just gives the Eagles, though, another option in their pass game, something they just have really lacked the last couple of years, that third guy. And sometimes even if he doesn't catch the ball, that he's at least an option that they didn't really have in the past.
Yeah, and he should be able to make those plays. I mean, if you think about it, you go in the Super Bowl, you think about Quez's opportunity to make a big play, and he didn't make it. Hopefully, if that's Jahan Dotson in that situation, he makes the play. That's sort of what you're looking for. When it's there, make it. But you're not going to be, game planning to get Jahan Dotson involved unless AJ or Devontae go down, and then you have better depth. So I think it's a nice pickup for the Eagles. But, yeah, Kellen's not going to be sitting up on the plane going to Brazil saying, I got to get Jahan Dotson the football. And that's the case with anybody. I'm not trying to criticize Jahan. It's Kenny Gainwell, who people know I think is the most underrated player on the Eagles. He's a role player on this team. He's not going to get the football a lot, but when he does, make the play. And he's in that same category. It's almost inarguable. They're not going to be able to get the football to Dallas Goedert and Saquon Barkley as much as people want. I mean, you started with that sort of thing. I mean, people want Saquon to touch it 30 times. It ain't happening.
What's a good number for you?
18 to 20, low 20s.
Yeah, okay. We're about to say, I would say 17, 22, somewhere in there, between carries and stuff. You just you wonder if aesthetically and the way they use that running back is going to be different from the Swift Sanders. And I've said this before. Sanders had 1,200 yards a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Last year, 1,000 for Swift. If I'm Jeffrey Lurie and I spent that kind of money on a running back, I would hope that he gives me more production than what those two guys did.
Well, I think in the Eagles' mind, it's about impact, and Howie has said this numerous times. It's not necessarily about volume; it's about impact. So, and it might not even show up in the box score if people are concerned about Saquon Barkley on a wheel route, and that opens up things over the middle for A.J. Brown or Dallas Goedert. So, it's intangible things that open up things for others. I think that's part of it, and I think the biggest part of it, as I said, is the 4-minute offense. When you're winning a game and you just want to drain clock and people know you're going to run the football, can you run the football?
Yeah.
I think they think they'll be better in that aspect than they were with DeAndre or even Miles Sanders.
So they're on the goal line, and it's a yard. Is it a tush push or is it a Saquon?
It's Jalen. Yeah, I mean it doesn't.
So the
have
tush
to be
push.
a tush push.
The tush push is still a part of the offense.
Yeah, I mean they have the best sneak quarterback, and arguably, certainly in the NFL, certainly in recent history, arguably one of the best of all time. At that particular, but he's got 28 rushing touchdowns over the past 2 seasons.
Well, I guess, John, and
table?
you can comment on this. I guess some people wondered, is that a case of Jalen being so good at it, Kelsey's role in it, how that changes with Juergen's role? You got, I would assume, I don't want to make an assumption that Becton will be in there now. What the roles of the other parts were and are to that play working? Well, I don't want to downplay Jason Kelsey because he's very good. Landon Dickerson's a big part of it. Back in prior years, Isaac Seumalo was a big part of it. So it certainly has to do with the center and the guards as well. But at the crux of it all is the quarterback who can squat 600 pounds. and I've always said when it was going around and fans got very upset, and even though the NFL was never considering it, there was that narrative that they might ban the tush push. And I said, it doesn't even matter. They don't need it. They'd be the best quarterback sneak in football team in anyway. Right.
And by the way, they were with Carson Wentz for similar reasons. Big, powerful quarterback behind a good offensive line.
John, Vic Fangio, who will probably be the most anticipated of the speakers after each game, had some interesting things to say on Sunday, I guess it was, when he spoke. What's the vibe you get about his answer on Cooper DeJean?
Yeah, my vibe is he's going to be inactive.
Wow. Inactive.
And that not only from what Vic said, but when we were in practice on Monday, Jahan Dotson was taking backup punt return reps behind Britton Covey, and that's typically Cooper since he's been healthy. And the indication that he wasn't doing that is probably because he's not going to play. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's – I think people a lot of people are going to get upset by that if that's the way it unfolds. I don't think it's that big of a deal. He did miss the 3 weeks, and, you know, when you put together your game day roster, you become more focused on, all right, who's going to help on special teams coverage. I think Jeremiah Trotter Jr. will probably be inactive, which will probably upset some people as well because they now have Ben Van Sumeren and Oren Burks, who are two of their best special teams players, and you already have Devin White and Zach Ball and Nakobe Dean to play linebackers, so you're gonna play the special teams guy.
Yeah,
that's sort of just building the game day roster.
How impressed do you think Fangio is with Quinyon Mitchell?
Oh, very impressed. I can't even get this guy to say good things about Jalen Carter, who is by leaps and bounds the most talented player he has. And he is just raving about Quinyon to the point you say, all right, temper it down.
I like that.
because I think, you know, the expectations become, oh, this guy's going to be shut. And he's playing Green Bay with all those receivers and their explosive passing game. And he's going to be playing a lot of the game at a position he's just starting to learn, the slot. And I think they're going to try to game plan to take advantage of that. If I were Green Bay, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
And they got a boatload of receivers, Green Bay. And they're all young and they're all gifted. and they all make plays. I'm surprised how much Vic leaned into how much he believes in Quinyon Mitchell.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, I saw a lot of the praise that he was giving for Mitchell. I know people started asking about Carter. Do you get the sense that Vic Fangio would like to play the guys more in the preseason?
Oh, yeah. Well, of course. But, you know, there is – I do think, you know, Vic's got his own little fiefdom there on the defensive side. But there are certain things that – are out of his purview, and you know the Eagles believe in the sports science and health comes first, and making sure the guys get as healthy as possible for week one, because you know who cares about preseason, to be honest. And but yeah, Vic's old school, and he preferred to have more reps, and he got a lot more reps than for his defenders than Kellen Moore did for his offense by far. So he's got a little bit of cachet, but at some point the Eagles say, no, that's enough.
All right, John McMullen, it's Eagles week. Friday, they will be on the air right here on 97.3 ESPN, taking on the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love and the Packers have a lot of expectations, and Jalen Hurts and the Eagles have high expectations. Who will get that first win Friday night right here on 97.3 ESPN? The coverage at 7, the kickoff at 8:15, and John McMullen here on the Sports Bash. Don't forget, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., Birds 365 on the Jacob Media YouTube channel. All right, Johnny.
Yeah, rumor has it Mike Gill will be there, so be ready.
Oh, tomorrow's Wednesday. Yes, I will be ready. I'll be ready to go. All right.
All right, thanks, bud.
I'll see you then. All right, McMullen here tomorrow as well on the Sports Bash. As practice will continue. Well, actually, no. Practice is done. Today was their final day. They're getting on the plane today, and they're heading there. I'll be on tomorrow morning at 8:20 with the guys on Birds 365. Get my opinions in over there. Coming up, we got football at 4 in about 27 minutes. There's 37 minutes from now. We'll break down the Eagles-Packers game on Friday. We'll also take a look at the odds as they get ready to kick off this season. And on the other side, it's our first edition of Who's In, Who's Out, as the Eagles take on the Jets, as the Eagles take on the Packers. Who will be the 14 NFL playoff teams? I'll have those for you coming up next, plus Phillies lineup out yet? Let's take a look. Not yet. When the Phillies lineup is out, you'll get it here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. By the way, John McMullen, his appearance is brought to you by Boardwalk Honda. Shop their new pre-owned and certified pre-owned Hondas online at boardwalkhonda.com. More Sports Bash coming up next on 97.3.
You're listening with Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
3:31 Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform. At Mike Gill Show, use the hashtag SBLive. Who's in, who's out, who's hot, who's not this season? It's brought to you by Ace Hardware Home Services, heating, cooling, and plumbing. The helpful team is now making house calls in South Jersey. Visit them online at acehardwarehomeservices.com to book today. You know, I drink the coffee out on the porch generally in the morning, and it went from hot over the weekend to a little chill in the air this morning. I loved it, which means it's time to possibly get that heater ready. Get that heater ready, people. All right, let's get the teams that will be making the NFL playoffs this year. It's my first preseason edition of Who's In, Who's Out, Who's Not Hot, Who's Not on the Sports Bash. All right, here we go. All right, in the AFC East, I'm going to go with the Jets. If Aaron Rodgers is healthy, they're the best team in the league, in the division. They got the most talent. They got the best quarterback play if he's healthy. Now, at what point does his age show? I don't know that. All I know is this. there have been other greats that have played into their 40s, and they were still pretty good. Tom Brady, Brett Favre. Is Aaron Rodgers on the same level of those guys? Yeah. But he has one thing that those guys really didn't have. A major injury at this stage of his career. Brady had an injury, but it was, when he was a younger man. He had the ACL. So I'm going to bet on Rodgers if he's healthy. Now, if he gets hurt, obviously they're not going to win the division. But I'll go Rodgers and the Jets to win the AFC East. In the North, it's another tough division. All four of these teams have at least something to say to win the division. I'm going to go Baltimore. It's a little chalky with Baltimore. Really good defense. Jackson, but adding Derrick Henry to the mix. Now, the problem with Henry is Derrick Henry ready to hit that wall where he just isn't the same guy? I don't think so. I don't think he's just all of a sudden going to have a flat tire. I think Henry's great this year. Great fit for that team. Love Jackson in the regular season. He needs to do something in the playoffs to put them on that next level. But I got Baltimore winning the North. Let's go to the South in the AFC. I'm going to go Houston. A little chalky as well. I don't think there's another team that has the offensive weapons that they bring. I love the quarterback, but getting him Diggs with Dell and the receivers and Mixon. I love the coach down there. I like the vibe from the Texans. I'll go Houston to win the South. That's going to be a fun division, though. I think Indianapolis is better. I think the quarterback's going to hold them back. Jacksonville was the pick last year, and they disappointed. Can they bounce back? That's going to be a much better division this year than last year. And in the West, I don't think there's a competitor to Kansas City. I don't know who, logistically, no one's close to them. I mean, no one's close to them in the West. So they're my four division winners. Any pushback on those four?
Yeah, I don't think Baltimore wins the North. I feel pretty comfortable about saying that. I think that they are a team that I have some questions about what they're doing defensively without McDonald out there. They've changed the defense coordinator again, and I don't know. They lost some guys at linebacker. I don't know how that's going to affect them. I thought you were going to go Bengals here.
I like the Bengals, but the Jamar Chase thing is kind of looming over that situation. Defense, I like Baltimore's defense better. They lost Mixon in the backfield. See how they replace him there. They lost, who's the other receiver? Went to Tennessee. Boyd. That's a weapon that was pretty big for them. That what made their offense is that they had these three guys, plus losing Mixon. I love Burrow. I love Chase. But what's going on with Chase? Is he even going to be playing on Sunday?
Good point. I mean, my personal choice is the Browns, but I knew you weren't going to pick that.
I got the Browns. I got the Bengals, the Browns, and the Dolphins.
Ooh.
They're my three wild card teams.
So
Bengals, Browns, and Dolphins, which means who's out? No Steelers.
Right.
No Bills.
Right.
No Chargers.
Yep.
No Jaguars. No Colts. Who else would be someone that you would think could be in that mix?
I mean, is Doug Peters going to keep his job if he misses the postseason 2 straight years down in Jacksonville?
Could be. He would be an interesting guy. If Jacksonville missed out again, does Doug Peterson, get the axe on him there? Depends. Are they 5-12? Are they in the mix but come up short? We'll see. I like the Bengals, as you mentioned. I like the Bengals, and I like Cleveland. I'm not down on Cleveland. I think Cleveland's a pretty good team. And I like Miami, too. I think Miami is a team that has a ton of weapons. They're one of those teams that's a good regular season team, but probably don't trust them come playoff time.
I hear you. Makes sense to me with the Dolphins. It's just, I'm looking at the Jags, and I feel like this is a make or break year for Dougie P.
I will say this. I think Jacksonville and the Texans both could be the representative from the South in winning the division. I think Jacksonville and Houston are neck and neck, so we'll see who's hot, who's not. materializes after a couple weeks of the season here. All right, let's go. NFC East. I've got Philadelphia in the East. No team has won the division back-to-back years since 2004.
Yep.
That means Dallas is probably out of the mix there. So I'll go Philadelphia there. I've got Detroit winning the North. I think this Detroit team's loaded. Very good. And if you look at their schedule, they play in a dome like every single week. Like they have no outsorts, nothing. They got a schedule that is conducive to them. Their offense is loaded with talent. I like their offensive line. They got skill players. Defense, middle of the road defense, but they have playmakers. Hutchinson can make a play. They drafted the kid that many people thought Philadelphia might draft, Arnold. So I like
Terry and Arnold.
I like Detroit there. In the South, Atlanta. I got Atlanta. They added the two pieces, Simmons. They got the trade for Judon. I think that Atlanta team's sneaky. I think they're sneaky. They got good skill players. I like them at running back with Robinson. I like them at tight end with Pitts. And I like them at receiver with Drake London. And they've got a quarterback now. You might not like Cousins, but he's good enough in the regular season to get them 10, 11 wins. I can tell you that much. So I like Atlanta in the South. In the West, I got to go San Francisco. I just don't have a strong enough case for anybody else to overtake them. They returned their whole starting lineup. They got Ayuk signed. I think Trent Williams is about to sign there too now, right?
Yes, he is. He's back.
So he's back. They got all their problems ironed out, and I just don't see them. I don't see them not winning double-digit games. And I don't know that anybody else wins 11 games out of that group of the rest. So I got San Francisco. Do you have any pushback on my 4?
The only pushback I got is the same pushback I have with you every year, which is you seem to always love the Falcons more than me. So I got to see it before I believe it, man. I really just don't understand how this team, I love their additions, but Mike, I need to see if they can actually do it on the field. You know what I mean?
I think I've got to remember last year. I don't think I took the Falcons to win last year in the South.
You didn't have them to win last year, the division, but there were points in time where you had them as a playoff team. So,
well, that whole South was just mixed match mediocre. You could have just pulled them out of a hat and taken. I like their skill position guys, Bijan, Pitts, and Drake London. I think that's a pretty solid group there. So I'll stick with those guys. And then the two players they just got recently on defense change the dynamics.
Right, Judon's a huge addition. Yes.
Yeah, and Simmons, if he can still play, we'll see.
We'll see if he can play, yeah.
All right, my wild cards.
Wild. Let's go wild.
Dallas.
Standard.
Green Bay.
Yep.
I'm going to go the Rams here. That one's going to fluctuate. I like Chicago. If Washington, we talked a lot about that in the offseason. If, obviously Daniels can play, that changes the dynamic for them. If he's a good player, an elevator. I think the Bears are the one team that can be the sneaky team. Seattle, maybe if Geno Smith gets to that next level. Where he was 2 years ago. He took a step back last year. He needs to get back to the level he was 2 years ago. Because they do have weapons on that offense, and I do like their defense. So I got L.A., Dallas, Green Bay as my wild card teams.
Yeah, I think the only team that you didn't mention that we have to keep in mind also is the team that won the NFC South last year. Tampa pretty much brought back the same team minus Devin White from last year.
They would be in the mix, too. Yes, you are correct in adding them to
the conversation.
I think Tampa can win the South. I think they could be in the wild card mix. I think Tampa, the Rams, Chicago are the three teams that would be in play for that last wild card spot. I like Dallas and Green Bay in that spot there. I think there's more playoff teams, potential playoff teams in the AFC than there are in the NFC.
I definitely agree with that. I think people don't realize that when you look at the Panthers, when you look at the Giants, these are not good football teams.
No, the Saints, pretty average. I think Arizona is a team that's not going to win a lot of games, but can be, dangerous at times.
They'll be like a spoiler at the end of the year for somebody.
Yeah. All right. That's who's in, who's out, who's hot, who's not, and that is brought to you by our new friends. That is going to be a weekly feature, as always, here on the Sports Bash Live. That's Ace Hardware Home Services, heating, cooling, and plumbing. The helpful team is now making house calls in South Jersey. Visit them online at acehardwarehomeservices.com to book today. It is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Taking another look at the Phillies. Nope, no lineup out for the Phils yet today. And I'm wondering, normally the lineup is out by now, so we'll see what is taking so long there. I do have the starting lineup for the Fighting Phils, by the way. Josh, you see over the weekend, Aiden Miller got called up, so their lineup tonight has Justin Crawford leading off and Aiden Miller hitting in the number 2 hole. So the Reading Fighting Phils have their lineup out, and it's quite interesting. The stars of tomorrow for the Phillies are playing tonight in Reading.
And Mike, too, what Frank Close said an hour ago, don't forget, how far away are we from a guy like Crawford and Miller getting to the major leagues may determine what happens to the current core of players, right?
Well, I'll tell you, Miller went from Clearwater to Lakewood. He played 58 games. It's Jersey Shore, not Lakewood, but that's where the stadium is. He played 58 games at Lakewood this year, Jersey Shore, and he's already up to Double-A. And that is a little bit more of a fast track than you would have thought for him. So he made the quick bounce from one to the other. So you would think maybe there's a possibility he could be in the mix maybe for next year. We'll see. He is, by the way, a shortstop. So that's another whole story. Aiden Miller plays short. Some people think that will be a third baseman at the professional level. What does that mean for Bohm's future? What does that mean for Stott's future? Because those two guys, of course, are two of the younger guys on this roster. All right, coming up, don't forget, in 16 minutes, it's football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.
It's this with Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
350 Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live. So yesterday, Josh, actually was Sunday. Sunday, I'm walking around the outlets up in Deptford, Gloucester.
Sunday.
And who do I run into? But Nick Earnshaw. I mean, what are the chances? I'm walking around, doing a little school shopping with my girlfriend's son. He's got school coming up, so we're doing a little school shopping for him.
Now, do you usually go up there for school shopping, or is this a different situation?
We do go up there from time to time, but one of the reasons we went up there was we did the K1, go-karts up in Cinnaminson.
Okay.
So we just figured, all right, we'll go up that way. Plus, we figured everything down here would be crazy because it's like still was summer season, the last day, everybody craziness. So we figured, all right, we'll go up that way. And we'll do the shopping up there, and then we took him to do the K1. So we're walking around one of the stores, and there's Earnshaw there.
Now, what store did you run into him at?
I think it was I want to say the Lucky store, the Lucky brand.
Oh, the clothing store.
Yeah, like Lucky Jeans.
Gotcha.
We were walking around there. So would you take Earnshaw as a Lucky Jeans kind of guy?
Oh, 100%.
Really?
He is totally borderline hipster.
So you're putting Lucky Jeans in the hipster category?
I mean, for me it is. I mean, I'm getting to the old man portion of the age bracket, Mike. So
are you getting close to wearing the white New Balance with the blue N?
No, I don't know if I'll ever be close to that. I'll leave that for Billy Schwein.
All right, just making sure.
You see the sneakers I wear, so
yeah, you got a couple new pairs.
Yeah, I got them on sale. When you get a sale, you got to take advantage of it, right?
Sure. I mean, if that's what floats your boat there. Yeah, so I'm walking around. I see Earnshaw there. So Earnshaw's coming up with the Nuggets today in about 40 minutes from now.
Did you question him why he was at the Lucky store?
No, I was just kind of browsing around. My girlfriend was looking at something. I'm just kind of walking around. And then he walked in. I was like, is that Earnshaw? Because it's funny. The last time we went shopping up that way. We were at the Cherry Hill Mall, and I walked into, I can't even remember what store it was, but I ran into Hunter Brody.
Oh, geez.
Right? I mean, so I was like, what are the chances? I'm out of, like, my area. It's not like I don't live around there. We drove, and then I run into Earnshaw, and then the last time I shopped up that way, I run into Hunter Brody, our old co-host here on the Sports Bash.
So what you're saying is every time you go up there, you run into somebody. It's like a tradition, unlike any other.
So far, it's like 2 for my last 2 that I've gone up that way. What did this guy text in? Mike, what's wrong with the New Balance sneakers with the blue letters? Nick from South Jersey. Nothing wrong. I think they're probably pretty comfortable. It's just like the unofficial sign that you've kind of tapped out, right? You've kind of given up. It's not a real stylish sneaker, Nick.
No, not at all.
So it's more like, hey, I'm kind of giving up. I'm just going with a shoe for comfort. Not for
some people would say that, like
Madison's cracking up laughing over here.
Yeah,
Would you agree with me? She says yes. I'm just making sure that it's not me. She says she agrees with me that if you saw a man courting you with a white sneaker and a blue end, she would probably say you've given up.
Do Crocs fall into that category?
The Croc is an awful look, by the way. I don't know where these kids think. I'm going to wear a Croc with a pair of white tube socks. It is a horrible, horrible trend. You got to be the kid that gets out of that trend. The Croc is a terrible look. I saw so many people rocking the Croc with the white tube socks this weekend and thought to myself, you really left the house like that? Really? This was the look you have that on? No. I was making sure she wasn't wearing those. No, she's got stylish Nikes on. Those are nice. Football at 4. Kaplan next.
97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Kaplan, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
I give my heart and soul to this franchise, as so many of us do.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, Adam Kaplan is back for another season of Football at 4. Eagles, Packers, Friday night right here on 97.3 ESPN. You can listen to the action with Merrill Reese and Mike Quick. And, of course, Adam Kaplan and the guys from the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. Just search Inside the Birds for their YouTube channel content as well. And every day at 4 o'clock right here on the Sports Bash. Kaplan's back, and he's with me now on the Sports Bash. Well, he never really went anywhere, but the season is officially here, Adam Kaplan. The offseason minutia is over, and we are ready to go.
Yeah, and by the way, I was listening to you earlier. The Eagles rarely release their injury report before 4 p.m. Eastern, so it should be about within the next 15 minutes as we speak here. So if we get it, we'll jump in and we'll give it to you. I get the Packers as well from them. I just checked with them, and they have not released it yet. So we're not expecting any surprises. But I will tell you, as you and I have talked about for several years, it may not happen now because they haven't played a game yet. But every couple weeks during the regular season, we call it the pop-up injury on Wednesday when they play a Sunday game, which we didn't know about. That's coming. We're not expecting it this week because they didn't have a game last week, but it'll come at some point.
Well, we'll keep an eye on that. You're right. I do not see one out as of yet, but we got a lot to dive into as we get ready for the 2024 season. Of course, Adam will be back on Friday. We'll take a little, breakdown of that game a little closer. But right now, Jeff Darlington over at ESPN, Adam, said this is the most important Week 1 game on the schedule this week. You got Green Bay with a lot of expectations, and you got Philadelphia, which, if this game doesn't go their way, are you going to have those doubts kind of creeping in that you did not fix what ailed you those last 7 weeks last year?
No, I know Jeff. I mean, I've known Jeff for a while. Good guy. I just don't agree with that. I get it. It's one thing if they came back with the exact same coaching staff, which they didn't. Both coordinators are gone. Most of the defensive staff is gone. No, it's a different team now. If they start 0-3 or something like that, then you're going to have to start scratching your head. Now, or I'll give you this one. Now, again, it's technically a home game, but they're not home, unfortunately. They're in Brazil. If they get blown out Friday at 8:15 Eastern, and it looks bad the first half, they wind up getting blown out, yeah, you could start saying, well, what is wrong with them? And by the way, the game week 2 is not easy when the Falcons come in, which is another primetime game. But look, let's see how they look first. It's not necessarily if they win. And, Mike, week 1 is very odd around the National Football League, talking to coaches. Just the way it is. It's the tackling generally is poor. I was talking to a personnel director on my training camp tour, and he'd asked me what camps I'd been to. He said he'd been watching us. And I go, yeah. And this guy said about his team, do you notice the tackling? He said, we're actually tackling. We're actually hitting. We usually don't hit, but we put an emphasis on tackling. By the way, more teams are tackling this summer than I've seen in years.
Yeah, and I guess listening to Vic Fangio over the weekend, he would not only like to hit or tackle more, he would like to have played, I think, more snaps in the preseason. I mean, he made the comment that Jalen Carter only played, 3 snaps in the first preseason game. It sounds like he wants more reps in preseason games.
He does. And by the way, I just got the injury report. Here it is. Boys, it's small. No surprises.
Yeah, I got it as well. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, no one on the 53 didn't work. I mean, they don't have to list practice squad players, but limited A.J. Brown resting player. It's comical. Landon Dickerson resting player. That means he didn't take all of his normal reps. Let's say they take 25 first-team reps per practice. It means they took less than they normally would have. Maybe they took 20. Clubs don't have to list, though, exactly how much they take. In terms of percentage, which is kind of annoying, when they changed the injury reports many years ago, and then Isaiah Rodgers it was a hand injury. We didn't know what it was. We now know it was a hand injury he dealt with. Devin White has an ankle injury. He was also limited. No one didn't practice on their 53-man roster, so they'll all be ready to go, Mike. We're expecting all their players on the 53-man roster to be available for Friday night's game.
Okay, with that, I want to get your opinion. McMullen said he thinks, based on Fangio's comments, that DeJean will be inactive. Do you agree with that?
I don't know that. I've not heard that. I would say this. Based on the comments, yes, he in terms of being ready, he clearly is not going to be ready to start at nickel. And the Packers, though, and Vic's right, I'm glad Vic shot that down, that they're heavy 11 personnel. That's not correct. I've known that since Matt LaFleur got in there. They could have 9 players on their 53-man roster, 9 receivers who could all play. He's going to bounce between 11 and 12 personnel, which means 3 receivers, 11, 12 personnel, 2 receivers, 2 tight ends. They're a big balanced offense in terms of personnel groupings and usage. But what's going to happen, Mike, is we know this is coming. Quinion Mitchell, when they're playing their base defense, is going to be an outside corner. When they go to nickel, he's playing inside. Or he'll be playing, as we also saw, closer to the box. They use him as a box linebacker, Mike. They did different formationally with Mitchell. But in terms of DeJean, you can't ask him to do this stuff. Playing nickel, I just don't think he's ready for it. Now, would he be inactive? That's a big pill to swallow, considering he is a second-round pick. I know he missed a lot of time. And let's not forget, Mike, he came back from the broken leg, which he suffered last November. And then he had a significant hamstring issue to start training camp. So, yeah, he's missed a lot of time. I mean, I'm not ruling it out. That would surprise me. But on that point, though, well, here, if he's going to play, this is the better point. Where are you playing him, and how many snaps are you going to play him?
Yeah, and he was asked about Maddox if he could play nickel if he needed to, and he said he could. So you do have, obviously there you have that possibility as well. It should be interesting to see what Vic Fangio's defense looks like against this Packers. You got a really good trio of receivers, and then they added Josh Jacobs. We'll talk more about this kind of the matchups a little bit on Friday's show, but let's take a look at some of the odds as we get ready to enter Week 1 of the NFL. We did this a couple weeks ago. I just did my who's in, who's out, my 14 playoff teams. The NFC East has not changed much. You got Philadelphia minus 150 to kick things off. Dallas is next at plus 170. But I want to get your take on the Commanders at plus 12. Do you feel that there's a lot of Commanders kind of like dark horse love out there?
Yeah, okay. So, Mike, the Eagles actually, if before training camp started, they were minus 110 or minus 120, which book you were looking at. Now they're minus 150. The Cowboys, now, are fans who know the NFC East futility that no team has repeated since 2004. I'm not sure, but the money has gone up. More people are betting on the Eagles. That's why the line moved. So they're minus 150. And you mentioned the Cowboys at plus 170 with the turmoil, with the contracts, and Jerry Jones once again putting pressure on Mike McCarthy. The quotes are pretty funny. Mike McCarthy, the head coach, is lame duck. He didn't have his contract extended. Now, yes, Mike, on the Commanders are plus 1,200. Everybody's looking to find that team, whether it's the Bears. We'll get to that division, NFC North, in a minute. Everybody's looking for that dark horse. Last year, the Texans came out of nowhere, right? The Texans were plus 1,800 to plus 2,000 to win the AFC South, depending, or really depending which book you're looking at. Now the Texans are minus 105 to win the AFC South after what happened last season. So the Commanders are plus 1,200. I just don't think the roster is good enough, Mike, to be honest with you. What we missed on the Texans is Will Anderson, their first-round pick, being great. Obviously, everybody missed on Stroud. But that's also turned out to be a very good roster. And when you have great quarterback play, elite quarterback play, you elevate everyone around you. Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and now the Texans have added Stephon Diggs. But getting back to Washington, they refuse to say that they're in a rebuild, but they're in a retooling there in Washington.
Plus 1,200 there in the Giants at the bottom, plus 2,000. The Eagles' opponent is the Packers. Plus 210. There's not a team that has minus odds in the North. Everybody you can win some bucks on. The Lions and the Packers are the top two. The Bears is that kind of third team, and the Vikings way at the bottom. But the Packers at plus 210, firmly one of the favorites in the North.
All right, we're going to start at the bottom, the Vikings, because of J.J. McCarthy. You know, it's a shame, Mike. All the reporters are saying that Darnold would definitely start. That probably would not have been correct had McCarthy not gotten hurt. McCarthy, I'm told, over the final 2 weeks of training camp, really came on. He was phenomenal in the game that he got hurt against the Raiders. He played great. It's unfortunate. With the meniscus surgery, he had the full-blown repair. He's done for the season. You know, eventually Sam Darnold's going to play like the journeyman that he's been. Somebody's only 27 years old, but they're plus 1,000. So forget about them. The Bears are plus 325. That is the team, Mike, this year that everybody's on. They're plus 325 to win the division. Maybe if we have time Friday, we'll look at wild card teams. The Packers are plus 210. If you're looking for value, I like the Packers at plus 20. The Lions are now a little bit overrated. They're plus 130. I get it. They've been really good the last 2 seasons. After the decades of futility, and somehow they kept Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, who was by far the number one head coach candidate. He jolted the Commandos, Mike, at the altar. They wanted him badly, and he decided not to take the interview, man. That was bizarre. And boy, the Lions get lucky. And they kept Aaron Glenn, their defense coordinator, so their coordinators are back, Mike. That's very important when you're really good. Their secondary, which started to get torched, they revamped their cornerback group. Gardner Johnson leaves the Lions. He's now starting for the Eagles. The only thing the Lions don't have is a good pass rush. That is my concern with the Lions.
The South is interesting. I think the Falcons, they are the clear favorite now. A couple of weeks ago, this was a little tighter. Tampa Bay, they won a playoff game last year against Philadelphia, brought the whole team back. They got some continuity there, so they're plus 300. The Falcons are the clear favorite, though, at minus 140, and Philly will see them on Monday night in Week 2.
Yeah, so let's start at the bottom. Panthers are plus 1,200. I thought it would be it's crazy. The Giants are plus 2,000. To win a division that no one has repeated since 2004. The Panthers, I know that they've improved the roster, particularly around Bryce Young. They're only plus 1,200. The Saints are plus 450. They are stuck in neutral, Mike. They're just so average. The Bucs, as you mentioned, won the division last season, and they blew out the Eagles, who were terrible when they lost 6 out of 7. The Bucs are plus 300. And the overhyped team, one of the overhyped teams in the NFC, it's the Bears and the Falcons. The Falcons are now minus 140. I'm going to pick the Buccaneers to surprise people. The Falcons have issues with their pass rush. I know they traded for Matthew Judon, who suffered a major knee injury last season. And when you look at the Bucs, everybody's pretty much back except they have a new coordinator in Liam Cohen. Who used to be with the Rams, and he went to Kentucky, then he went back. the NFL with the Bucks. I'm going to pick the Bucks to upset the Falcons for that division.
All right. I had Atlanta there. I just did my who's in, who's out. I took Atlanta there. I like Simmons and Judon. I think those are two good additions there. And they got those three skill guys that I like a lot. Maybe I'm too high on Robinson.
They're
Pitts.
loaded on offense, Mike. They're and Zach Robinson, gosh, I remember covering him as a college player. He's now their offensive coordinator and first-time play caller. They're their overhyped team, the Falcons, no question.
All right. I think the West is maybe the easiest one of them all. Is there even a dark horse there, or is this the 49ers and only the Niners? Is there someone you think can challenge them? The Niners at plus 200, the next closest team, the Rams at 325.
Yeah, actually, the Niners are minus 200. The Rams are plus 325. I give Sean McVay credit. He does it every year. We count him out. Guy's a great coach. Aaron Donald's retirement. Seahawks at plus 750. I like Ryan Grubb, their new offense coordinator. No more Pete Carroll micromanaging his offense coordinator. They're going to have a fun offense. Mike McDonald, the head coach, will run their defense. They just don't have enough talent overall in defense. They're not going to win that division. They could challenge for a wild card. The Cardinals and Jonathan Gannon, who were very competitive late in the season. Remember that win at Philly. They get Kyler Murray back now full-time, where he came back late last season. They're plus 1,400. No one's going to challenge them.
All right, let's go to the AFC, where obviously there's a lot of fun ones there. I think there's more potential playoff teams in the AFC this year than there are in the NFC. When we did who's in, who's out, or by the way, my wild card teams were the Rams, Cowboys, and Packers on that side. And I think the Bears, maybe Washington, maybe Tampa Bay would be the other. You like Tampa better than I do. I would have Tampa as a team that could be in that third wild card mix. But that's on the NFC side. Let's go to the AFC. I took the Jets to win the AFC, plus 160. I'll win a couple bucks there. The Bills are right there. The Dolphins, too. That AFC East is going to be very interesting, probably all season.
Mike, let's start kind of in the bottom, right, with the AFC East. The Patriots, they have the worst odds of any team, plus 2,800. Look, the quarterback position for them is the question mark. Drake May will not start. They're going to go with who we thought it would be, Jacoby Brissett. May will start a majority of the games, but they're going to go with Brissett early on. The Dolphins, then the odds really change. The Dolphins are plus, it's really tight. The Dolphins are plus 225. The Bills are plus 180. This is really cool. The Jets are plus 160. So it's super tight. And by the way, the Bills were the favorite most of the summer. The money now from New York is coming on the Jets. They're plus 160. I do like the Jets. I got to be honest with you. That's been my team the whole time. I was with the Jets 2 weeks ago, and the Giants visited them. Look, they don't have a Son Reddick, but they're still going to have a good pass rush. Maybe the NFL's best defense. They got Rodgers back, knock on wood, full time. That he plays all 16 or 17, excuse me. I like the Jets at plus 160.
Yeah, I like the Jets as well. Bills, I'm not as high on the Bills this year. I said last year I thought their window was closing. They got rid of a couple of high-profile players. I think they're putting a lot more on Josh Allen's back this year. We'll see. I like the Dolphins as a regular season team, not as much as a playoff team. That division has a lot of great storylines. The North, equal storylines. Baltimore plus 125. Cincinnati plus 165. The Browns made the playoffs last year. They're plus 500. And the Steelers made the playoffs last year. They're plus 700.
Yeah, when you really look at it, Mike, the Ravens were actually a deeper favorite. They're now down to plus 125. The Steelers are plus 700. It's the turmoil quarterback. They got injury concerns, pretty significant injury concerns on the offensive line. Can they get any kind of passing game on Arthur Smith, who could never develop a passing game with the Falcons as their head coach? They want to run the ball in Pittsburgh. That's comes from ownership down to the head coach to the offensive coordinator. The Browns are plus 500. Could Deshaun Watson, who has not played well since 2020, can he regain anything? Coming off he had a surgery that fixed two areas of his right shoulder. Good roster. Otherwise, Nick Chubb, they don't know exactly when he'll return at running back after one of the worst running back injuries in NFL history. It's terrible. Bengals are only plus. Mike, the tightness between the Bengals at plus 165 and the Ravens plus 125. Is Jamar Chase actually going to play without practicing training camp? They don't know that yet. So, Mike, right now I got to go with the Ravens.
I like Ravens as well. I got Cincy and Cleveland, by the way. as wild card teams. It all lays on Deshaun Watson, though. What Watson are you getting? That team's pretty good, but they need quarterback play. I like Cincinnati as well. So they're my two wild cards in the South. I think this division is going to be a lot of fun. I think the Titans are interesting, at least at plus 1,000. The Colts, what kind of quarterback play are they going to get at plus 325? The Jaguars, plus 300. And then the favorites are the Texans at 105. Can they play with expectations?
Yeah, I'm surprised, Mike, when I got these odds. I'm surprised that the Texans are only minus 105 after what happened last season. The Jaguars choked, losing 5 of the last 6. In fact, the Jaguars, Mike, I'll admit it, I picked them to win the division last season.
As did I. I did too. You're not by yourself on that island, man.
I did well last season. I got 5 of the divisions right, but in fact, not only did I get the AFC South wrong, I picked under 5.5 wins for the Texans. And I also got it wrong the year before in the Jaguars. I don't know what is going on with that division. You're right, Mike. It's very competitive. The Titans plus 1,000. I got them. We'll do divisional over-unders on Friday. Those have also changed. The Titans are plus 1,000. They're not winning that division. They've improved the roster, but they're farther away. Colts with getting Anthony Richardson back at plus 25 at quarterback. The Jaguars at plus 300. Boy, it's tight between the Jaguars and Colts. And after the Jaguars choked last season, Mike, Doug Peterson's on the hot seat, and as you said, the Texans are the clear favorite at minus 105. I quite frankly, Mike, I would have had them at minus 125. I don't quite understand why they're not a higher favorite.
All right, that's the South. A lot of fun storylines there. The West, though, I don't know that I can come up with a path for anybody to overtake the Chiefs here.
I'm stunned that they're only minus 300. I would have had them minus 500. This hype on Jim Harbaugh. I know he's a great coach. University of San Diego changed their program. Stanford, they won there. With the 49ers, made the Super Bowl. Michigan, national championship. Great coach. There's no question about it. They're plus 375, Mike. The Chiefs are only minus 300. I guess the odds makers should protect themselves here. I don't know, man. I would have had them much higher. The Raiders are plus 1,100. Gardner Minshew will be their quarterback. The Broncos, nobody has any confidence in with Sean Payton are plus 2,200. But I agree with you, Mike. The Chiefs are a shoo-in with that one.
Yeah, minus 300 is that number now. As we mentioned, the Chargers plus 375. Denver all the way at the bottom at plus 2,200 to win there. Of course, that is long shot odds in the AFC West with their new quarterback. Bo Nix, they announced as the starting quarterback. The rookie is there. All right, Adam Kaplan, football at 4. There you go. I did who's in, who's out. We took a look at that perspective from a betting standpoint. And then, of course, this Friday, we will take a closer look as the Eagles and the Packers kick it off Friday night in Brazil. And you can listen to the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. And I'm sure Inside the Birds this week, the podcast, the YouTube, the Patreon, you guys are going to keep killing it again this season, I'm sure.
Appreciate it. Yeah, and we had Mike Quick on with us on Patreon. Oh, it was unbelievable. He gave some great intel from his notes from practices. And Todd Hermans, who did a chalk talk with us, former Eagles offensive lineman, who talked about the transition from going to tackle to guard, which is really difficult. Oh, and we got some big surprises coming up. Patreon.com/Inside the Birds.
All right, check that out. And, of course, right here on Football at 4. Adam's back Friday. Moshe is here tomorrow. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
All right, there you go. Football at 4 brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Phillies lineup is out, so I'll keep it here for a minute to give you that. It's brought to you by Clark's Moving and Storage, located in Rio Grande. Moving to breeze with Clark's Moving and Storage. Josh, it sounds like the Phillies listen to me. They're going with Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Castellanos, Stott, Real Muto, Marsh in left, Sosa at third, and Rojas is in center field tonight. No Hayes in the lineup. Tyler Phillips gets the start. So Rojas in center, no Hayes in left field tonight. They're going with Marsh in left against a right-handed pitcher. So Rojas is getting that opportunity to play center field tonight. That's the configuration that I like the best.
Listen, it's almost like the waiting for the meme of The Rock saying, finally, with this lineup.
I think the Phillies are a better team with Rojas in center field and then the other two guys platooning in left. There's just not enough offense from Hayes against right-handed pitching. Against lefties, he's fine. You can play him in left field against lefties. You play Marsh in left field against righties.
Exactly.
I know Rojas does not add a lot offensively, but if you play Rojas for 6, 7, 8 innings, and there's a spot that now you have Hayes as a bat off the bench.
Correct.
You have Wilson as a bat off the bench. You have a couple options for bats off the bench that you can hit for a while. You didn't have that option last year.
Nope.
You didn't have a guy that could actually go in there and do some hitting. But right now, against right-handed pitching, Hayes is just not getting it done. So I'll take the speed and defense of Rojas over Hayes. I like the lineup tonight. No Bohm, by the way. Bohm is out of the lineup tonight with that hand problem. I think he's available to pinch hit the other day. Chris Bassett is the starter. Remember Bassett without the pitch clock?
Oh, he was horrible.
Oh, man, he was a human rain delay.
He
Terrible.
would just stand there and shuffle his feet and adjust his glove and just look like the plain bland look on his face.
7:07, the first pitch there. They're going with Springer, Varsho, Guerrero, Horwitz, Wagner, Kirk, Bargner, Clement, and Loperfido, the local kid, is the 9-hole hitter for the Blue Jays. That's your matchup tonight, Phillies and Blue Jays. And, of course, we'll be talking about it tomorrow right here on the Sports Bash. It looks like Jack Driscoll is signing with the Eagles practice squad. So that is happening as well. There you go. Driscoll is back with the Birds. We got more on the other side. Plus, don't forget, 5 o'clock tonight, Bob Wankel talks some Phils. We'll get his thoughts on this Phillies team moving forward out of that series win against the Braves, which I think put some people at ease. But is everybody at ease? 5 o'clock tonight, Bob Wankel here on the Sports Bash. I'm Mike Gill. We are live at the Gallery Bar Booking Games at Ocean Casino Resort. You know this is the place to be Thursday night. If you're someone that likes to watch the game out on location, you will not find a better spot Thursday night than right here at the Ocean. And Friday night, Eagles and Packers. This place, I was here earlier, Josh, and we were setting up, and some of the guys that work here said this place was jumping this weekend for this college football games.
Nice.
Jumping. So Friday night, it's going to be nuts in here. It's going to be awesome. Such a great place. The Gallery, the Ocean, and we got it for you here every Monday. Of course, it's Tuesday this week. I know, because of the holiday, we're here on a Tuesday on 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
432 Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN here at the Gallery Bar Booking Games at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. We're here every Monday. We're here Tuesday because of the holiday yesterday. We all had the holiday yesterday off, including Nick Earnshaw. But he's back for another edition of Nick's Nuggets here on the Sports Bash. They're brought to you by Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. Get your game on at the Gallery Bar Booking Games this football season. Go to the Gallery, go to Ocean, go for the win. For more, visit oceanac.com. There he is. Nick Earnshaw is back with the first edition of the football season Nugs.
What's going on, Mike? Nice to see you. I saw you over the weekend. I bumped into you at the store. You're shopping. I'm shopping. It was a good time. It was nice to see you over the weekend.
Yeah, I know, man. I was talking about this earlier. I said, I saw you when I went shopping. The last time I went shopping in that area, I ran into Hunter Brody.
How about that? It's a popping spot, that's for sure. And I was looking for a new Eagles jersey for the season. Made a purchase. I'm pretty excited about it. Can't lie.
You got your little jersey ready for the season. That's nice. That's going. But look, Friday night you got that. Still got the Phillies today. Got the lineup out. So big series here. Got to keep it hot. Can't bounce back. Can't revert back to where you've been. You got to stay hot.
They got to stay hot. One guy in particular, I'd be remiss. I knew you opened the show. I heard the open of the show today. Yeah. Mr. Nick Castellanos, Nugget number one. Nick was fantastic this weekend. Helped them beat the Atlanta Braves in extra innings on Sunday on ESPN. It was a fantastic game to watch. And I gotta say, Castellanos has been fantastic as of late. Through 52 games since July 1st, batted .275, 324 OBP, 477 slug, 8 home runs, 31 RBIs, 25 runs scored. He is only the 4th Philly, according to The Athletic, to hit 4 walk-off hits in a season since 1920, Mike Gill. Cassie's been good. He's been really good. I asked the question during the update, do you think this can continue through the postseason? We've seen him have big moments in the postseason. Mike, I know you're skeptical. He's a streaky hitter. I get that. But we got to ride this high while it's happening.
What else are you going to do? I'm not advocating to not ride the high while it's happening. Well, I mean, listen, I understand what Castellanos is. By the way, I'm like in the middle of talking here. I hear Country Roads playing in the background, and it's like making me sad. It's making me sad. Anyway, so look, I'm not advocating for Castellanos to be benched or anything. Like you need him. He has to be good, Castellanos. I can't get the Castellanos. Look, we talked about this earlier. Here was Nick Castellanos' playoff performances in his career. This is what he has been with the Phillies. In the 2022 wild card, he hit 0, no hits. In the 2022 division series, he hit 313. In the championship series, he hit 222. In the World Series, he hit 125 with 10 strikeouts. Then he hit 250 in the wild card round last year. Then he followed that up by hitting 467 in the division series. Mm-hmm. And then he hit 042 with 11 strikeouts. That is up, down, up, down, up, down. You can't win like that in the playoffs when you have guys like that you're depending on. And this team, as you just chronicled, right now they're depending on him. They need him. But to win the World Series, you can't have up, down, up, down. Regular season is cute. October baseball, when you need him, you can't be streaky. You gotta be consistent. And those numbers there are about as inconsistent as you can get. If I was to say, put a poster on the wall of inconsistency, they would put those numbers that I just told you up on the wall.
I heard you earlier when you looking up the Webster's Dictionary, too. Picture of Castellanos right there, as well as inconsistency. Listen, I understand he's a streaky hitter. I get it. It's okay. He has been a model of consistency lately, and maybe he's turned a tide this late in his career. Who knows? Maybe he's caught fire, Mike, because he has been that good. I just gave you the numbers, how consistent he's been over the course of the past couple of months since July 1st. He's been a steady drive of 275, 250, 260. He's getting base hits when you need him, and he's been clutch. He's been clutch, Castellanos. That's been the biggest thing for Nick as of late. And right now, you're going to need him to be as consistent as he's been over the course of the past couple of months. And he has confidence right now. If he has that confidence going into the postseason, it can be elongated through the playoffs. And that's why it's so important. I will add this. It's very important the Phillies do not play in the wild card series this year. They cannot do it because even if they still win the division, based upon the seeding, they could still play in that extra series, possibly against the Braves. Who knows? That is huge if they don't have to play in the wild card round, because then you get a couple of games you don't have to play, you get the rest, and then Castellanos, maybe he elongates that consistency into the NLCS, into a World Series possibly. But he's been good lately, and that's what it matters. I know he has a history. I get it. But even if he's not consistent, even if he's giving you the 250 and then the 400, you need the other guys to step up too. They got to be more consistent. Castellanos has been the only guy who's been that guy who is stepped up over and over and over again. The other players, the Harpers, the Turners, they've been battling back and forth between really good and then they can't find the strike, so they can't hit. So those guys also have to step up. They're leaning on Castellanos right now, but those other guys, you're paying them a lot of money too. They have to step up as well.
I agree. All these guys. And by the way, Schwarber, too streaky. Harper has been up, but he's more consistent. Bowman Stott are not getting paid $100 million. You want to put Bowman Stott into your conversation, now you're talking about go gadget. I'm reaching. I'm talking about the guys who are getting paid $100 million plus. You get Bohm and Stott. There's young players. I expect the ups and downs from them. But when you're the $100 million man, I can't have you hit 0-42 with 11 strikeouts. That's downright brutal to have that kind of anchor in your lineup. Schwarber, same problem. Hey, listen, they're all part of this. It's why they're not winning. They have too many streaky hitters. You can give me the other guys. Call them what you want. You want to say Harper's too streaky? You want to say Schwarber's too streaky? I have no problem with that. That's why they're not winning the World Series with this crew. They're too streaky.
See, I think they can win a World Series because
I think they can. I think they can. You keep saying that I don't think they're not going to. I think they can win the World Series. But what will hold them back in the end, if we say why didn't they win the World Series, the same reason why they haven't won it the last 2 years. Because in the playoffs, you can't have 0-42. You can't have 11 strikeouts. You can't have those guys getting paid. Harper has said it. If you're going to win, it's the high-paid players. And their high-paid players have not been able to be consistent enough when they need them the most. Led by a guy like Castellanos, who carried them in one series and was a disaster for them in the next.
Well, that's when you need other guys to step up. That's what needs to happen. I think it can happen. They're good enough for it to happen for them to win a World Series. I could see it happening and seeing Turner get hot. They just can't all get cold at the same time. That's been the issue. For some reason, it's the weirdest thing I've ever seen in the World Series, in the NLCS last year. Every single one of those players got cold at the same exact time. I don't think that happens this year. I think it goes the other way. I think you'll have contributors and other guys getting cold, other guys being hot. It's not going to be everybody going cold at the same time. I think that's the difference. That's why I think they could get over the hump. I don't see it happening 3 years in a row. Third time's a charm, Mike, okay? I think they get in. They get hot. Certain guys get hot at the right time, and it's a balancing act. You're going to need certain guys to be hot, and other guys may be cold at that point, but you can't have 5 or 6 guys all go cold at the same time.
Yeah, listen, I mean, you had 2 years ago, you had Rhys Hoskins kind of carried you in the one series, right. The Padres series and the Braves series, and then he went ice cold in the World Series. The big problem is for me, too, it's not even like some guys are hot, cold. Their batting average suggests you can't have 11 strikeouts. That means no productive outs. You're doing nothing to help the team. That's where I talk about the streakiness. Like, you could go 0 for 5, but hit the ball on the screws all 5 times. Right. You might do something productive. The 11 strikeouts in this series against Arizona, the 10 strikeouts he had in the other series, when you're striking out to that extent, that is where I say that's the streakiness part about it, where you're either streaky hot, hitting balls all over the yard, or you're not even contributing. Like Bryce Harper, you get guys like that they might be low batting average, but they're hitting the ball hard, they're doing things, they're hitting sac flies, they're moving runners. They're more productive outs than 11 strikeouts. I can't get that picture out of my head. And a guy who strikes out 11 times in a series, I'm sorry if I have a hard time trusting that. That's just me.
Leave it in the past. Mike, you gotta leave it in the past. It was last year. It was the year before. Whatever. I don't think it can't be that bad again.
All right.
It can't be.
All right. Well, then I'll go back. I'll go back to the World Series against the Astros.
That's 2 years ago.
I'm just. These are the only things I have to go off of. I have a 125 batting average with 10 strikeouts in that series, and I have an 0.42 batting average with 11 strikeouts in another series. I'm sorry. If you throw those on my resume, you're going to say, I can't trust you. I would hope you couldn't trust me. If that was my resume, and I handed it to you, and I say, here's my playoff performances. I hit 125 with 10 strikeouts in the World Series, and I hit 0.42 with 11 strikeouts in the National League Championship Series. I would hope Nick Earnshaw doesn't trust Mike Gill either.
Here's the thing. It's what have you done for me lately, in my estimation.
And you're right. You're right. What have you done for me lately? And that is the latest, that is the most recent resume that I have, is what have you done for me lately?
That's last year, 2 years ago. I'm talking about right now, right this second. He has been fantastic and the most consistent player.
This is Joel Embiid. In the regular season, you're the MVP. And then in the playoffs, you can't be 0-42. You're not going to change my mind on that. When he finally carries this team in a big series that gets them further than they are, I will say he finally changed my mind. Until that happens, I don't care if he hits 600 in the month of September. If he hits 0-42 in October, that 600 doesn't mean anything.
All right, we got to hit the fast forward button to October just to get us there already so we can move this conversation
Listen,
forward.
I will tell you, you're right. This Phillies team is getting close to the time where people are going to start thinking them like the Sixers, where nothing they do in the regular season is going to change your mind if you fail me in the playoffs.
It very well could get to that point.
I will say this.
Problem is,
Castellanos, for the last 3 months, has been very consistent. He's hit 275 every month since the All-Star. June, July, August, I think he's hit 275 on the nose. You can't be more consistent than that. I'm not talking about his regular season, which I don't care a lick about. I want to see consistency against good pitching day in and day out. And guess what? I don't trust it.
See, I trust it because I think it's a carryover. The confidence he has right now, he can carry into the playoffs. I'm not worried about last year. I'm not worried about the year before. I care about right now, right this second, carrying it in October from September. But we'll see what Castellanos does. Let's see if he keeps the streak going tonight with the Toronto Blue Jays. Going to be fascinating. It was a long first nugget. I got to go to nugget number 2. Mike, nugget number 2. We might only get a 2-pack in today. Who knows? Sixers Arena. I don't know if you saw the latest report. The New Jersey state officials have sent a proposal to the owners of the 76ers, Harrison Blitzer, Josh Harris. They're getting a proposal, a strong one, to build on state land for a mixed-use land and buildings and all this type of stuff, commercial, stores, whatever it may be. And they would get also tax breaks as well. But Harris Blitzer, they would pay for the whole thing. This is getting real now, Mike, it feels like, because that's a pretty lucrative offer that the state of New Jersey is sending the 76ers.
No, that one, it boosted up a level here where New Jersey's now putting the full court press on, saying, no, we're not kidding around with our offer. This offer is something that you need to consider. I know I've joked a lot of times, too, that they should put the stadium at the AC racetrack there in Mays Landing because they have the land to build hotels and more stores, and you would really get people to move to that area. But I don't know, where is it, Camden they're talking about doing this?
It would be in Camden, mixed-use development with an arena, commercial, residential, and retail offerings, according to ROINJ.
All right, here is, and I did see that article. I did not get a chance to read it this morning. I will dive into it a little deeper, but this was my initial take on that. I have never been, believe it or not, to the Sixers practice facility in Camden. So I don't know how easy or difficult it is to get in and out of that area, like if there's a ton of traffic going in and out of there.
It's right next to the Freedom Mortgage Pavilion. It's right next to that. The traffic gets a little dicey out of there. I don't know where exactly they would put it on the waterfront, but that's where I'm assuming it would be. It would be on the waterfront, near the stadium, the concert venue, as well as the practice facility right there. It could get a little congested there, but it's like you get right off the train. It's right there. It's easy accessible from Route 42. It's a lucrative offer. And you know, all the stuff coming out about the city and them looking over what the proposal could be in Center City, some of the negatives that are coming out of it and the pushback they're getting. New Jersey, I mean, this is a pretty big deal. If they could swoop and get the Sixers to come across the bridge, it's very appetizing if I'm the 76ers, especially with all the negativity surrounding Center City.
I actually, and I know where the, whatever it's been called, BB&T or Blockbuster or Sony, I don't know, what are they calling it nowadays?
See, I know it is BB&T Pavilion. That's how I remember it, but the banks changed names.
The last time, put it this way, the last time I was at a concert there, I think it was called Blockbuster. So my point is, I don't know, I can't visualize getting in and getting out of there because Yes, the Blockbuster. The last time I was there, it was called the Sony Blockbuster whatever theater or whatever.
Pavilion.
Yeah. So I just can't picture the area and the parking and the in and the out. Listen, if you ask me, I wouldn't move. If you want to build your own arena, I have no problem with saying build my own arena. Just build it right there on the stadium. Build it right there. I mean, but if they're getting a better offer from Jersey, you got to at least consider it. Better than the one that's in Center. The Center City thing does nothing for me. I live on the Jersey side. I don't want to drive into the city if I don't have to. That's a pain in my ass.
See, this would make it easier for you and I because we're on the Jersey side. We're on the other side of the bridge. We don't have to pay the extra $1 in toll money going over the bridge now. It'd be a nice little thing for us. We just hop on the expressway and boom, we're there at the stadium. Pretty easy for us. But yeah, New Jersey's making a pretty strong play to get the Sixers to change their minds of being in Center City. So we'll see what happens. They don't want to rent anymore with the Flyers at the Wells Fargo Center. All right, 2-pack and Nugget. Nugget 1 went a little long. Well, we got a 2-pack on a Tuesday.
All right, there you go. Hey, listen, that Castellanos thing is fun because, listen, I want you to be right. Here's a one that I am arguing. Well, of course. What do you think? I want him to stink? Of course I don't want him to stink. I want you to be right. I want to lose this argument. I want to lose the argument. I don't want Castellanos to hit 0-42 with 11 strikeouts again. That would suck. I don't want that. And as I said before, I was a huge fan of the Phillies signing of Castellanos. So I'm a Castellanos fan. I want him to succeed. Unfortunately, the signing for me has been a disappointment. And even what he's doing right now, he's been very good. And where would they be without him? I don't know. But he's still not as impactful as I was hoping for.
What we can't do is we can't compare him to Tobias Harris anymore. He's got a little bit of a clutch gene. Tobias Harris, no clutch gene. So we can't compare him to Tobias. We did that earlier in the season. I'm out on that comp anymore. But, yeah, you remembered where you were when he signed with the Phillies. So
I do.
I hope I'm right. And I
remember.
I'll be right.
Not only do I remember where he was, I remember how excited I was. And I said, this guy here is an impactful bat. I wouldn't call him an impactful bat. He's a middle-of-the-road kind of guy. Listen, when you signed this guy, you were thinking 30 home run, 100 RBIs. He hasn't been that guy.
Hasn't been that guy, but maybe he could be. Maybe he could be through the postseason.
And again, Earnshaw, the Nuggets, I hope you're right on this discussion. I hope you're right. I hope you're right. All right, there's Knicks Nuggets. They'll be back again tomorrow. By the way, Rojas in the lineup tonight over Hayes. I hope we start to see that change as well. Are you on that? Are you on Team Rojas every day or 100%. Hayes every day?
Oh, I'm Rojas all day, every day.
All right, good. You're smart there. All right, it's brought to you by Ocean Casino Resort. Knicks Nuggets are back tomorrow here on the Sports Bash Live. When we come back, Bob Wankel from Crossing Broad on the Phils.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort studio, here's Mike Gill.
All right, final hour of the show. Sports Bash Live at the Gallery Bar Booking Games, Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. Getting ready for another Eagle season here. We'll be here every Monday, of course. I know it's Tuesday, but because of the holiday, we're here on a Tuesday today. Hopefully everybody had a great Labor Day weekend, safe. And now that we have the island back to ourselves, we have football back as well, but we got baseball tonight. Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad. He's co-host of the Crossed Up podcast, his Phillies content over at Crossing Broad. And, of course, the RedOctoberPhilly.com newsletter will be back and cranking here for the fall season. He's with me now to talk a little Phils. We got so much Phils to get into. We've been getting a lot of debate throughout the day. Bob Wankel, what's up, buddy?
What's up, man? Good to talk to you. Interesting times with the Phillies, right? Big weekend. Everybody should be feeling good, but yet still seems like some people are on edge here, and I get it.
I was going to say, what does the weekend do for you? They take 3 out of 4. Was there something that you said, okay, I learned this about them, and I feel better about what I saw?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look at it through the optimistic lens, look, the bullpen was sensational. The guys that really matter were phenomenal all weekend. They've been on a really nice run lately. Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler were both outstanding. And I think that that's something that you can feel really good about. You know, that 1-2 punch at the top of the rotation, that's what it's all about in October. You know, we can talk about inconsistencies and the bats going cold in the playoffs last year, but if you're going to get that type of starting pitching and you can go 4 or 5 deep out of the bullpen and feel good about it, you're going to have a chance to get to a World Series. That is the positive outlook. Obviously, there are plenty of things that you can kind of get into that aren't so positive.
I noticed that you did not mention Nick Castellanos. Is he not winning you over for his weekend? I know he was the story of the weekend, at least the other day with the 2 RBI, 3 RBI game. He has the walk-off win. Where are we with him? Is he at a spot now where we trust him? You know, he's been so consistent the second half. In fact, I think you tweeted, where would they be without him? I don't know, man. I know that if it's me, I'm not there yet. I just keep seeing the 0-42 with 11 strikeouts, the 125 with 10 strikeouts against the Astros. That's the guy that I'm worried that I see against good pitching night in and night out.
And you might. I feel like the do you trust Nick Castellanos question, though, isn't really, like, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but, like, do you trust Jalen Hurts this season? Like, from a macro level, from a high level? Yes, I do. But do you trust Nick Castellanos against elite pitching in a postseason series? Like, not necessarily. It's like kind of apples to oranges. You know, Nick Castellanos has hit 280 for the last month. He's hit 280 for the last 2 months. He's hit 280 for the last 3 months. He has really been that model of consistency. He hasn't gotten crazy hot, but he hasn't gone ice cold. He's been their most consistent hitter at a time where they really do need some consistency in the middle of that lineup. So I give him credit for getting his season back on track after it was totally off the rails through 40 games. Do I think that he's an elite hitter all of a sudden? Do I think he's a true blue, heart of the order, just knockout hitter? No. I think he's a flawed hitter, and I think that he's obviously got holes in his game and holes in his swing, but you know, look, you could do a lot worse than Nick Castellanos right now. And when you look at Kyle Schwarber and what he's gone through, 9 for his last 60, hasn't homered since August 14th. Bryce Harper's obviously making an impact, still getting on base, still hitting, you know, for average here more recently, hasn't homered since August 9th. Like, when you have guys that just are going prolonged stretches and not getting the job done, you need somebody that hits 280 for you. And do I think he can be that down the stretch? Like, sure I do. Do I think he's going to win you a postseason series single-handedly? No.
Well, but that's the thing, is you almost feel like the guy he is right now is more of a necessity, the 280, just kind of doing what he's doing, as opposed to the guy who goes 476 one week, 0-42 the next week. Like, you can't have that level of back and forth. 250 for a 3-week period, you would almost take. And the 11 strikeouts, that's the problem. Non-productive at-bats in those big moments.
Yeah, look, one thing I'll say is if you want to question the Phillies and sort of their overall makeup, I think that you can question whether or not they have a killer instinct. And that can go all the way back to 2022 when they were underdogs and they were playing a team that was better than them on paper in the Astros. But you know, you get through game 3 and you're up 2-1 and you've got 2 more games at home and it feels like, wow, this team can win a World Series. And they didn't drop the hammer. And then last year they have a 3-2 series lead in the NLCS against an inferior opponent and they didn't drop the hammer. And then this weekend, after missing some opportunities to do it earlier in the season, they finally created some distance between themselves and the Braves. But this team hasn't really dropped the hammer. And they find themselves tied with the Brewers or a half a game ahead of the Brewers, then a game and a half behind the Dodgers for the top spot in the NL. And even this weekend, like with one more chance to knock out Atlanta, it was the pitching staff and it was Nick Castellanos. But I didn't see a lot of killer instinct from that lineup against Spencer Schwallenbach, who's a good arm, but a guy you've seen 3 times now. Against Reynaldo Lopez, who's a good arm, but a guy that you've seen 3 times now. Like you know, these guys aren't Cy Young. And as good as Aaron Nola is, as good as Zach Wheeler is, as good as Ranger Suarez is, the Braves get to those guys occasionally. The Phillies got to figure it out. That offense was dismal this weekend.
Yeah, and that's the point is the last couple of years, you've gotten to the Braves pitching staff. This time around, the Braves feel like their pitching staff is better than the one. I know Strider's not here, but he's one of the guys you've gotten to. I would imagine the Braves feel better about their pitching with this team than they've had the previous two.
I would think so. And look, I mean, there's no Bryce Elder this time around. And these last 7 games that the Phillies saw the Braves over the last 2 weeks, there was no Chris Sale, and he's very much a factor. He's right now the betting favorite to win the National League Cy Young Award. So when you throw Sale into the equation, they've had some success against Fried. I don't love him. But, Ronaldo Lopez has just destroyed this team now, and so is Schwallenbach. So it's like, if you get into a series with them, especially a 3-game series, that's a hold-your-breath situation. As good as you feel about Wheeler and Nola, the Braves are able to match that up and all of the pressure. I mean, I know the Braves were the team that went out early each of the past 2 postseasons, but the Braves and Phillies, the injuries that the Braves have had, all of the pressure would be on the Phillies in that matchup.
Tonight they're going with a lineup that I've kind of advocated for against righties. The Rojas is in and Hayes is out. Give me your kind of assertion on where that is. How do you think they are configured? For me, Hayes gives me nothing against righties. He's an okay outfielder. He's not that fast. I mean, he's got speed. He's certainly not Rojas in the outfield, and he doesn't have the speed. I'll take the speed and defense of Rojas if you're going to hit if they're both going to hit 200. Give me Rojas in center. That's what they're going with tonight. Will we see more of that, and do you think that's the right decision?
I think it's going to be the right decision if Austin Hayes can't produce against right-handed pitching. And I know the Phillies made the deal with the idea that he'd be the everyday guy and that he could handle right-handed pitching with increased at-bats, increased looks. And that just has not come to fruition. A little bit of a projection by the Phillies. I'm not willing to say after, a month, which is included in an IL stint, that they've misprojected what Austin Hayes is. But so far, there's really no signs to believe that an uptick in production is coming. And so if that's going to be the case, you might as well go with the superior outfielder who, though look, we've had this conversation all season. I don't really believe in Johan Rojas as an offensive player, but to his credit, he's been somewhat productive here in the second half. It's a lot of 2 hoppers and 3 hoppers and finding holes, but you know what? Like, you'll take what you can get right now. And so given that the defense is far superior, keep him in the lineup, let Brandon Marsh hit against righties, and see if you can get Austin Hayes going against lefties, and you have your platoon.
Well, and that's, to me, if you're going to play Hayes in left and Marsh in center, well, now you're weaker in both left and center, and you've got a guy in the lineup hitting basically 200. Hayes is not helping you. So at least if I play Marsh in left and Rojas in center against righties, I have Hayes as a potential bat off the bench if a left-handed pitcher comes into the game. That's something Rojas does not offer. You're not going to pinch hit him for anybody. But Hayes, you would use. So I'll take Hayes as bat off the bench as opposed to deploying Rojas in the game for 1 inning to play defense. I'd rather have Rojas' defense for the whole game than 1 late inning there. That's why I think they're better just going with the better defensive configuration in general. They're better defensively with Marsh in left and Rojas in center than Marsh in center and Hayes in left.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Brandon Marsh is a far superior left fielder than he is a center fielder. Brandon Marsh is an adequate defensive center fielder, but he is an above average defensive left fielder. So you are hurting your defense in 2 spots. And if you don't get that offensive production on the back end from Hayes, then it really just makes no sense. So here we are.
Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad Phillies, and, of course, RedOctoberPhilly.com. And the Phillies getting ready for the Blue Jays tonight. Yes, it's Rojas in center tonight. Hayes is sitting, and we'll see if that begins a pattern here, because it's been generally Hayes in left, Marsh in center. Tonight they're kind of switching that up here. The other thing is I want to get your take on Estevez and the bullpen. He had that one shaky night where you're like, he had a little command issues there. But as he kind of settled those nerves for the Phillies fans out there, Estevez in the ninth. They did use Hoffman the other night, and that was, he was already warmed up.
Yeah, I mean, look, we talked a little bit about that late last week, but Hoffman is in a spot where you know that he can close games. He's been successful doing it. Yes, they had him up, and it's convenient to say, well, we didn't want to use another arm that was already hot. Hoffman's the logical option in that spot. And that's fine, and you can take that at face value. I think that the Phillies really wanted to go out and get that game, and I think they felt that Hoffman was going to give them the best chance to do it. That's my opinion from afar. Mm-hmm. Now, that being said, you see Estevez in 2 important spots over the weekend. He was excellent. He was especially good on Sunday night. in really key spots. And I think one of the things that you want to see when a guy is performing at a high level for a team that does not really figure in the playoff race, closing games for the Angels is much, much different than closing games for the Phillies in front of a sold-out crowd on national television with what really feels like the final chance for the Braves to make a run at a division title hanging in the balance. A really important spot for the Phillies. And he gets it done. And it was brilliant. And I think that, if you had concerns about what he is and his ability to do it here in a big spot, a big stage, this weekend should have quieted some of those concerns.
Yeah, I agree with your comment. I said when they make the trade for Estevez, and there's nothing you could do about this. When you add a closer at the deadline, he's coming from a bad team. So you're closing games out in low atmosphere situations because a good team's not trading you their closer. So I was interested to see how he kind of handled that. But if they could get him to be the guy he was in Anaheim, that really changes the dynamics of this whole bullpen. And then getting Alvarado back, you don't know what to expect from him. But now all of a sudden, we talked about it before, this bullpen has a lot of shaky spots. But when they're all cooking at the same time, it becomes a positive for them. It becomes one of their strengths.
Yeah, I mean, look, Orion Kerkering is seemingly back. I know people think I'll put the hex on him, but he's been very good his last handful of appearances. Estevez showed you what he was capable of this weekend. And again, you feel good about Strahm and Hoffman. I know Strahm gave everybody some anxiety on Sunday night, worked himself into quite a jam, but worked his way out of it. And, he's a guy, it feels like when he bears down, more often than not, he's going to get the job done. So, you look at those four guys and you have to feel very good about them. And then Jose Alvarado is sort of the wild card in all of this. We know that he's pitched at a high level before, still throwing the ball 99 miles an hour. He has not hit, his spots on a consistent basis. He's not missing bats nearly as much as he has in previous years. And I do think that there's some genuine and legitimate concern about him. We'll see if this time away from the team, now he's back. He's settled in here. He's had a couple days since he's been activated. You'll probably see him at some point in Toronto. My guess is you probably won't see him in the most highest of leverage situations here at the start, but you try to build up his confidence and get him back to where you think he can be, and you've got a month to do it now. And if you get something out of him and you pair him up with Banks and you have two interesting left-handers on top of those four guys I talked about, and all of a sudden that's a pretty damn deep bullpen. It's not a perfect bullpen, but it's pretty good.
No doubt. And then, of course, you're going to get Tyler Phillips tonight because of the whole Walker thing. You wonder what's the plan with this spot. How many more times does this come up? Is Phillips, Tyler Phillips, I should say, is that their plan the rest of the way in your mind?
I think it's some combination of Phillips and Allard, who obviously threw the ball well a couple times for the Phillies before he was sent back down in favor of Taijuan Walker getting that final start against the Astros last week. Last we saw Tyler Phillips, August 14th, he allowed 9 hits and 5 earned runs against the Marlins. He was not particularly sharp in that game. He was okay against the Dodgers the time prior to that, and then he was rocked by the Mariners, which was really his first blow-up start for the Phillies. He's got a 5.5 ERA this season. I don't know. I don't know that you're going to see 5 starts from Tyler Phillips in September. I guess I'd actually be surprised by that. I think you'll see some split between Phillips and Allard here going down the stretch. That's what I imagine you'll get.
All right, Bob Wankel. There was some report over the weekend about Harper, and he's a little banged up here or there. Do you have legitimate concern about Harper? Is this not a big deal for you?
Yeah, I have significant concern about Bryce Harper. I believe that he's hurt. I think that you don't want to be overly quick to make excuses for a guy. Sometimes superstars struggle, and to say, oh, automatically Bryce is hurt, it kind of feels like you're covering for him a little bit. But this report comes out, both wrist and elbow. I believe it. You see the brace out there that's made a return recently. I think that he's going through something, and he has been productive. He had a pretty decent weekend against the Braves, but he's not Bryce Harper. He looks like the guy that we saw when he first came back from injury last season. He just doesn't have the same pop. He's missing a lot of hittable pitches that he typically does big-time damage with, and if he's not that guy, it's really hard. As much as we talk about the bullpen, as much as we talk about Nola and Wheeler at the top of the rotation and the depth in the middle of it, if Bryce Harper's a 280 hitter but isn't isn't a power threat in that 3-hole, it really is hard to talk yourself into the Phillies getting through the National League and beating the likes of Arizona and L.A. and Milwaukee. Like, they need him to be a difference maker. And if they got to sit him down for a week and that helps him and there's a tangible benefit, I know you don't have that luxury here on September 3rd, given where the top 2 seeds are. But, man, if you could do it in the back end of September, I'd strongly, strongly consider it. And that's why it's important that this team does not take its foot off the gas after a good weekend against the Braves up in Toronto. This is not an easy series, and we know how, and they've certainly rectified the issue against the Marlins in recent seasons here, last year, this year. But, like, you can fall asleep down there, and the Phillies have shown that they are not immune to that. So they gotta take advantage of 2 lesser opponents here, because this schedule does not get much easier in September now. You see the Mets twice, who have been very good, really since London. You see the Chicago Cubs, who were left for dead. They're back in the playoff race now. They got the Brewers on the road for 3. I mean, this is a challenging September. Philly's got to get wins where they can, man.
Yeah, the Mets thing is interesting. They kind of like were cheering on the Phillies this weekend to get themselves back into this race, and here they are all of a sudden feeling like, hey, we play you 7 times now. The Phillies are going to have that challenge coming up for them. The other guy would be Schwarber. He had this great batting average. Not great, but, I mean, for him, great. And now he's reverting. And the power, not as much for Kyle Schwarber. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's been a mess. I mean, he's not really walking much either. He walked twice this weekend, but he was 2 for 16 against the Braves. His last 7 games, he's 2 for 27, 0 homers, 4 walks, 12 strikeouts. That's a 194 on base percentage out of your leadoff guy, backed up by a 074 average and 074 slugging percentage. That's not going to get it done. And frankly, it's remarkable that the Phillies are 5-2 in those 7 games with that level of production from him. But it really does extend back to basically just following the Dodgers series. I mean, Kyle Schwarber went off in Los Angeles. His OPS was almost nipping at 900. Really a difference maker in that series for the Phillies. And since then, he has been abysmal. And we know that Kyle Schwarber is a hot and cold player, but this is a little bit extreme now on the cold side of things. He's got to get it going.
They got to get him going.
They simply cannot function like this.
I said, listen, and we get into this back and forth about not trusting Castellanos. I put him in there because he makes $100 million. You got to get more than what he gave you last year. But you could put Schwarber and to some extent Harper in the big playoff series. They've all been too streaky. They've been streaky, really good, and carry you, and then they're streaky part of the reason, and Harper said it. It's our fault that we're not winning because those star players, the Schwarber, the Harper, the Castellanos, the Turner, they have not got enough consistency from them in playoff rounds.
Well, think about this. In the last 19 days, the Phillies have not gotten a home run from Kyle Schwarber or Bryce Harper. So not only just the pure power outage element of it, but you compound that with the fact that Schwarber's not getting on. I mean, if Kyle Schwarber was walking a ton and hitting 300, but they were all singles, you'd say, like, all right, no big deal. But if you get no power from your 1 and 3 spots and your leadoff hitter's not getting on base,
yep,
you have a big problem there. And it's not like Trey Turner's exactly a model of consistency either.
No, it's funny. He's up for the batting title, too. I don't know what that says. I mean, he's in the batting title race, and I wouldn't think, like, man, this guy is one of the top hitters in all of baseball.
Yeah, well, I think it speaks to 2 things. Number one, the pitching has just been so advanced here this season. Like, numbers across the board offensively are down, even from 2-3 seasons ago. But I think it also just speaks to, if you look at the, game MLB wide, there are a handful of guys who would be ahead of him in the American League, but it's kind of like in the NL, it's more of just an opportunistic thing for him. Batting average has been tough. Harper's hovering around the top 10, top 15, and he's had prolonged stretches where he has not hit. Alec Boehm, the same deal. You can sit at 290 right now, and you're 2-3 hot weeks away from potentially winning a batting title right now in the National League. It's pretty crazy.
Bob Wankel, getting ready for the 1st of September here, or the 3rd of September, the first game in September for the Phillies. And, of course, that will lead us to the playoffs. You can hear all of that right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, buddy, we'll see you.
All right, thanks a lot.
Bob Wankel, RedOctoberPhilly.com. Check out the newsletter, the coverage of the Phillies over at Crossing Broad, and the podcast Crossed Up over at Crossing Broad as well. The Sports Bash this hour brought to you by Key Acura of Atlantic City. For a great car buying experience, go check out my guy Rocco over at Key Acura of Atlantic City, Tilton Road, EHT, your small but friendly dealer. Online at KeyAcuraAtlanticCity.com. If you've got thoughts on the Phillies, you can text them at 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. We had Castellanos. We've got the Phillies lineup in general. Listen, Castellanos, to me, is a microcosm of the whole lineup. You know, you might say, why is Castellanos, quote-unquote, streaky? The whole lineup's problem is they're too streaky. That's been the issue with this team. So you want to insert some other guy's name in there, I have no problem with that. I think Bryce Harper has more of a track record of consistency than Castellanos. Schwarber is very consistent in terms of he's a 220 hitter. So you wouldn't put him in a good hitter category. He's just a power hitter who gets, a lot of walks. That's the difference. Castellanos doesn't walk enough. He doesn't have productive outs. He strikes out, a lot, as does Schwarber. But Schwarber, makes up for his strikeouts a lot of times with the amount of times he walks. His on-base percentage is so superior to Castellanos, so I can trust him more to find other ways to get on base. If Castellanos doesn't get a hit, he ain't getting on base. He's not making productive outs. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live. My fantasy football draft is tonight at 7 o'clock. I have no idea what pick I have. Is that good or bad, Josh?
I think that's poor planning by you.
I tried like hell to get the draft changed. It's my girlfriend's birthday tonight, so happy birthday to Heidi. Her birthday is tonight. I fought like hell to try to get them, and I was the only person in the league that said I could not do the draft tonight.
Wow.
So I got shot down heavy by everybody. So I've done no research for this draft. I don't know what pick I have. And I also have dinner reservations for tonight here at Ocean. So I am going to have a poor draft, I would predict.
Or do you have a great draft because you go in there with no expectations?
Oh, man. I could have I probably should have done more preparation. Like, I had my buddy text me the other day. He has the third pick. Should I take this guy, this guy? I was like, I don't even know who you're referring to. With some of these just last name onlys, I was like, that's how disconnected I feel right now to fantasy football drafting. But I'll see how I do tonight. I have the 10th pick. I'm hoping. Now, part of this is I'm going to be doing the draft from dinner, and then I have to drive home. So I'm going to have to draft while I'm driving.
Oof.
Not safe, right?
No bueno, senor.
No. Listen, I even wrote in the text message chain. They said, hey, this is the night of the draft. Can anybody make it? And I wrote back immediately, no, it's Heidi's birthday. And I got shot down as fast as possible.
Well, what you're really saying is that you care more about your girlfriend than anyone else does. That's what you're saying. That's what we take away from this.
Yeah, they told me to bring her. The draft is live, and I am not going to the draft. I said I'm not showing up for that draft.
Right, because you said that, listen, I prioritize her over you buffoons.
Yeah, exactly. I said...
See, that's what we should take away from this.
They put out a text, who is showing up for the draft tonight? And I said, I will not be there. I will not be
goodness.
there. So... Meanwhile, I got another text chain blasting me for having a draft, and I said, I don't make the draft.
Right.
I voted no. And I said, listen, can we make it tomorrow night? Wednesday night, I'm fine. I'm in. Could have helped you out Wednesday. I did not win that battle. Damn it. All right. Sports Bash Live. By the way, we're at Ocean Casino every Monday. I know today's Tuesday, but you get it. The holiday was yesterday, so we moved to today. Friday, we are on the road another Happy Hour Friday celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash. We're going to be at Landmark on the Rowan campus. $3 Bud Light bottles, $3 Bud Light drafts, $5 neutral vodka sodas. Then stay for the Eagles game as they take on the Green Bay Packers. This football season, you can catch all your favorite games at the Landmark. Every Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, enjoy ice-cold Bud Light bottles and drafts for $3, along with $3 hooped spiked iced tea draft in their famous mason jars, and $5 vodka sodas in your favorite flavors. That is this Friday. We will be at the Landmark, famous spot on the Rowan campus in Glassboro. More Sports Bash coming up. The Big Three is next.
We have the perfect sitting in traffic.
You come with me.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
He's just played good. You know, he's done a good job picking up his responsibilities, done a good job playing, and he will be out there.
That's Vic Fangio. Man, a lot of praise for Quinyon Mitchell. We talked about it earlier with John McMullen. We're getting there. Friday night, you can listen to the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Josh Jennings, my producer. And we have today's Big Three. This hour is brought to you by Kia Acura of Atlantic City. For a great car buying experience, check out my guy Rocco at Kia Acura of Atlantic City. Tilton Road, EHT, your small but friendly dealer. Online, Kia Acura of Atlantic City.com. All right, Josh. That was Vic Fangio. I think we're going to have a lot of Fangio bites on the Big Three this year.
I think there's going to be a lot of Vic Fangio bites every day on the Sports Bash moving forward on 97.3 ESPN because he is arguably the most interesting man involving the Eagles of all the Eagles coaches. I mean, Sirianni could talk for 15 minutes and say nothing. And Fangio gives you 8 seconds and you can get something out of it. So, Mike, before I get to the next audio bite from Fangio about Quinyon Mitchell, I want to ask you initially, kind of give the audience your perspective on it. How do you feel about all this praise that he has been piling on with Quinyon Mitchell?
I like it. You know, because so many times, especially veteran, curmudgeon-y, crusty guys that are coordinators in this league, they like to, fan out the flames on the rookies. They don't want to give them the praise. They want them to have to earn it. So many times, they like to kick the rookies down. Fangio, you would think, would be in that mold, right? Crusty, old, veteran. You would say, hey, rookie, prove it to me first. So I think it's a great sign that he is going out of his way. I don't want to say going out of his way. He was asked about Mitchell, but he didn't hold back on Mitchell. So I like it. I like the fact it tells me that this kid can play. Because if he couldn't play and they were worried, I don't know that Fangio could hold back. I don't know that he could sugarcoat it. He got asked about Cooper DeJean. Yeah, he's done about as good as he can, but it's not good enough.
Right.
I mean, he came right out and said that the other day. So, in fact, we had McMullen on earlier, and he said he thinks that's going to lead to Cooper DeJean being inactive for the game on Friday night. And I think some people might be surprised to hear that, although, he was hurt, and it could have held him back a little bit. But the point of that is all leads up to is this, right, is Fangio will tell you what's on his mind.
Which is a good thing, and which is why I think this next bite I have for you, Mike, is interesting because Fangio talks more about Quinyon Mitchell, and it started making my mind churn a little bit with some questions. So here what Fangio has to say.
We did play him at nickel early on, and he did fine in there. I do think for him personally, it would be good to lock in at one spot. Because even though we've been very happy with his development and his learning abilities, he still is a rookie, and I do think if he can get comfortable at one spot, it would be to his benefit. Mm-hmm. But we may not be able to do that.
Yep, I agree. I said this. We had that conversation earlier, which was if he, isn't ready or skill-wise, they don't like what he brings. I think that's kind of been cleared up a little bit more is that, they like Rodgers and they're just trying to get their best 3 guys on the field. In other words, they like Mitchell in the slot better than they like the alternative. So that's why they're going that route. But ultimately, you want your best guys on the outside, and they think that he's the best guy. They want him to be an outside corner, and they want him to make the impact on the outside sometime this season. So it'll be interesting to see, though, if this trio now, as McMullen talked about earlier, if there's only 2 corners on the field, it's going to be Mitchell and Slay. So they do like him more than they like Rodgers. It's just when they have 3 corners on the field, he's going to be part of that 3. They're just going to move into the slot. Why? Because they, there's like, this is like something where you're coaching younger kids, right? This happens to me all the time. You got a lot of young kids when they come up on the big field, and they only are ready to play second base. Like their arm is not ready. They're not really big enough to have enough range. But you might have an older kid whose position is second base. But you're saying, well, I have to play this kid at second base because, quite frankly, I'm not ready to trust him anywhere else. I trust you to play another position. I know you're a better second baseman, but I trust you to play third because I can't play that kid at third. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like the trust level for Mitchell is I trust you to play inside or outside because, quite frankly, I think you're better than everybody else we have. That is sometimes a trust thing. It's a tip of the cap to how much I trust you. Is that I'm going to play you in a position that's not your position, but I got nobody else I trust to do it more than I trust you.
Yeah, and I think that it's a hat tip to the talent that he is, Mike. Is the fact that this team, to me, I take it as the Eagles are saying this dude is so gifted and talented and so worthy of being on the football field that we are just going to do whatever it takes to get him on the field, no matter what capacity it is. And let's be realistic, Mike, with a team like you are facing in week 1, like the Packers, they don't have a bona fide number 1 receiver, right? They have 3-4 guys deep that Love will throw the ball to. So in a game like this, it may be even more important to have 3-4 bona fide corners on the field, whereas maybe in another matchup, you might not need 3-4 guys on the field like that. It might be a matchup-based thing too, right?
Most likely, yes. I mean, this is a week where you would think 3 guys are going to be on the field at most times. Definitely.
Whereas other teams, maybe like the Saints, you look around and be like, well, you know what? Maybe we don't need 3-4 bona fide corners on the field. And in that game, maybe you turn to Rodgers and be like, look, you're going to have a lesser role this week because of who we're facing.
Yeah, and listen, you're going to see Mitchell play generally pretty much the whole game. I don't think, but that's the good thing, is you want your rookies to contribute right off the bat right away. And that is not always, I know last year Jalen Carter pretty much played right away off the bat, but Nolan Smith did not. You had a first-round pick last year.
You basically redshirted him.
That didn't do a whole heck of a lot for you. Jordan Davis, his rookie year, he had a role, but it wasn't a big role on the team. So you've had some first-round picks over the years that have not come in right away and made a big impact for you.
Mike, my number 2 topic I got for you in the Big 3 today, Brandon Graham. He is continuing this narrative, Mike, this offseason about the relationship between the players and the coaches. And while people on some platforms are so questioning, I don't know why this team went downhill last year, Brandon Graham is continuing the narrative that it was the coaches, Mike. And so he was speaking with Brandon Scoopy Robinson at a gala. So this is from Brandon Scoopy Robinson's YouTube channel, where he asked him, hey, how is everything going with the coaches this offseason? And Graham said this.
The connection with the coaches, the players, everything's been, checking off boxes so far. It's just more about now we got to see when we go through some stuff, how we going to do together. How we going to handle them problems.
Well, he's been consistent, right? That the connection with the coaches wasn't there last year. And I've said all along this offseason, the Eagles identified the problem and they made a change at both spots. They better be right about it. That's all. And I'm not saying that they're wrong. I agree with them. I think Johnson was the wrong fit, and I think Desai was the wrong fit. I think they got the right fits. I like Kellen Moore, and I like Vic Fangio. So Brandon Graham, not telling us anything new. He's just saying the connection with the coaches, it's there this time around, and maybe it wasn't last year.
And it reminded me of what he said at the beginning of training camp, Mike, when he spoke to the media. This was almost 2 months ago, and I'm almost getting like echo in my head because when I heard him say that to Scoop B, it reminded me when Brandon Graham said this to the media almost 2 months ago.
We got a good coach in Clint, and I really think that last year we just didn't. That's what we didn't have. We didn't have all the right coaches in the right position, I would say. And, you can just see the guys just truly believing in what we got going on. And I'm excited for the young guys that just came in, the new rookies coming in. They really going to get a good shot at a good taste of what it really is to be in the NFL.
The one thing with Brandon Graham, too, is what kind of – he's going to have to be that leader now, too. He's going to have to even have a louder voice in that locker room.
One of the team captains now.
Yeah, that was interesting. So he got team captain. Smith lost his captaincy, right?
Right, and it was interesting because when they asked Sirianni about it, he said that Smith got votes, but he didn't get as many votes as some other guys did.
And I think, and he said because, like, Barkley, I think, is a captain this year.
Mm-hmm.
So Barkley wasn't here last year.
Right.
Barkley was a captain with the Giants, and he has enough cachet that he got the votes. Now, I think did they scale back their numbers of captains too from 9 to 7?
Let me pull up the full list again so I don't misstep anybody's name. Don't want to not give somebody credit here. You know what I mean?
I just saw that Smith wasn't a captain this year, and I don't think that's all that big of a deal. Whoever wears those C's on their chest, you barely even notice it in the NFL.
So here's the full list. So on offense, it's Lane Johnson, Jalen Hurts, Jordan Mailata, which I thought was interesting, and A.J. Brown. On defense, it's Brandon Graham and Darius Slay. And then Jake Elliott, the kicker, is...
Wait, didn't Barkley get one?
Not according to the statement here from the Eagles in front of me here. This is from the Eagles official Twitter.
Okay.
So,
I thought that Barkley was one, and that was one of the reasons they said, but maybe not.
Mailata's new.
Mailata is new.
So that, maybe that has something to do with it. I got to give Mailata credit, Mike. He really has stepped up this offseason and how he's been speaking to the media and his articulation of different topics. I definitely can see why his teammates might have chosen him for that position.
Yeah. Well, Graham will be interesting this year because I think Vic Fangio said this weekend that, hey, we're not looking, to lessen your role. We want more from you.
Right. Exactly. Mike, my third topic for you before you get out of here, college football week 1.
Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts here.
Because this past weekend, some interesting results, to say the least. Florida State getting smashed again. Clemson looking not good against Georgia. Your Mountaineers, they basically got rained out and never showed up in the second half. Weird weekend in college football.
Yeah, somebody texted in earlier. I think that was your buddy Jeff over in Ocean City, who, by the way, Jeff, thanks for stopping by at Jester's on Friday. It was good to see you out there. Do I think Penn State is a playoff team? Yeah, probably. There's just not a lot. I don't think there's 12 great college football teams. I think there's 20 good college football teams, maybe 3 great ones and 17 good ones. But that said, I was highly disappointed. WVU's fan base disappointed me, and it's something I never thought I would say. It's a great fan base. They support. They love the Mountaineers. It was a weird situation, but I can't buy it. I'm sorry. There was a lightning delay at the game on Saturday, which delayed the game for how long, Josh? Like 2 hours?
Oh, it was over 2 hours because, we were monitoring that game because we had it here on 97.3 ESPN, and I kept looking at the clock. I'm like, well, an hour's gone by. Now it's going to be – they didn't resume until 4:23 was what the announcement was, and that was over 2 hours since they went to halftime.
So – and I get it. Listen, it's a lightning delay. I don't know where you're supposed to go. You had to vacate the stadium. And once you're out of the stadium and you're hitting it again because were liquidly lubricated. But my point is this. You waited all season for that game. You waited all season for that game, right? You probably, that town was filled. The tickets were sold out. It's the biggest game. It's the biggest opening game in Morgantown since 1998 when they played Ohio State, who was the number one ranked team in the country in 1998. It's Penn State. It's West Virginia. And when they came back from the delay, the stadium was essentially more than half empty. It's
Crazy.
a terrible job. I mean, you weren't out of the game.
No, they were in the game.
They were in the game. They weren't playing very well, but you weren't out of the game.
Penn State was not exactly running away with that game.
No, what was the score? 12-3 at half or 12, something like that? I mean, it wasn't like you were getting blown out, although that late score right before the half was a killer.
Yeah, that was kind of a gut punch.
Was it 20-6? I don't remember.
I think it was 26. 20-6.
Yeah, but now that I'm thinking back, they scored that with 6 seconds left in the half.
But 20-6 is not insurmountable.
Yeah, no, you're in the game. And for them not to show back up, I was so disappointed. By the way, college football, you had all day Sunday and you had all day yesterday to play games. How do you have one game on Sunday and one game on Monday? Bad job. Why baseball? No Phillies on Labor Day. How do you have no Phillies game on Labor Day? Or all baseball games should have been starting at noon yesterday and going all the way through. Boom. The NFL, if these clowns aren't going to get their act together, you know what? Start the season on Monday night and own Monday night as well. Push the idiots from college to the side. If baseball doesn't want to get their act together, NFL, continue to stay greedy and say, we'll start our season on Labor Day Monday. Because guess what? By Labor Day Monday at 8 o'clock, I think everybody's out of gas and ready to sit on the couch and watch a little football.
100%.
And Florida State, Boston College ain't the game I want to see.
Yeah, another Castellanos showed up in that game.
We'll close out the show coming up next.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
All right, get ready to get out of here. It's time for the Bet365 Play of the Day. I got a little two-pack for you here, all right? Put them together, parlay this up. Lindor and Goldschmidt, a hit apiece tonight. Lindor has a hit in 13 straight. Goldschmidt in 9 straight. I think both those guys get a hit tonight. Goldschmidt, Lindor, and there you go. Play that tonight. You get a little banger there, a little 2-spot, and you get a couple of extra bucks with the 2-play for the Bet365 Play of the Day. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We'll be doing this throughout the season. We're going to get our 6-pack on Friday for you. College football and NFL, yep.
Yeah, really quick. My pick for today. So there's a little boost on Bet365. If you take the Orioles, the Braves, and the Dodgers, all money line, it's plus 186 tonight, Mike.
Go for that. I don't endorse that one, though. I don't know what you said. What did you say? It was your pick or their pick?
My pick.
Oh, I thought you said they were offering a boost.
There's a boost on it, plus 186.
All right.
Orioles are playing the White Sox, Braves are playing the Rockies, and Dodgers playing the Angels.
Okay, that sounds like a good one. They should all be winners tonight. Phillies and Blue Jays tonight, of course. And tomorrow we'll be back on a Wednesday. Tomorrow, right here on the Sports Bash Live, Mike McGarry will look back at the Phillies, McMullen on the Eagles and the Packers. My NFL Find 5 Ugly 5 version 1, first one. We'll have that for you tomorrow as well. Mosher and Jeff Kerr tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Don't forget Eagles football this Friday night right here on 97.3 ESPN.